This is an interview with Albert Tarbell in the Hampton Inn, Carrier Circle, Syracuse, New York. It is the 16th of January 2003. The interviewers are Michael Russert and Wayne Clark. It's approximately 3:30 p.m. Would you give me your full name, your date of birth, and place of birth, please?
Yeah, my name is Albert A. Tarbell. I was born on the St. Regis Indian Mohawk Reservation in Hogansburg, New York, August the 24th, 1923.
What was your educational background prior to your entering military service?
When I went in the service, I had 2.5 years of high school. And it was not till after the war that I got a full high school diploma from Fort Covington High School.
Okay. Where were you, and what do you remember? What was your reaction when you heard the news about Pearl Harbor?
I was attached to the Stormont, Dundas, Glengarry, and Highlanders in the Canadian Army. And when we heard about Pearl Harbor, and we knew that the United States was going to war, there was quite a few of us in that area there that were from the American side that were in the Canadian Army. And I was too young to go overseas, so I was on the training staff there. And I more or less I knew that eventually I would end up in the American Army when Pearl Harbor came.
Why did you join the Canadian Army?
Well, I dropped out of high school, and I see all these parades in Cornwall and this and that, and I guess next thing you know, my cousin and I joined, and we were really too young to go overseas, and so I ended up being a corporal on the training staff eventually. And when I heard about Pearl Harbor, and I knew then that eventually I would probably be coming back to the States.
Okay, when did you leave the Canadian Army?
I left there around in, I left in Ottawa, I think it was around March. It was a bitter cold winter, and I had a slight cold. I got home, and I caught pneumonia when I was home on furlough. And my father and mother discouraged me from going back. They said if they can't take care of you, you should not go back. So I stayed home, and I worked on a farm, and then I went to work in the spring in Messina, and then I ended up as an apprentice lineman, working as an apprentice lineman. To make a long story short, I ended up in Syracuse, New York, and then this is where our union hall was, and I worked around the States for a while, in the New York State, Buffalo, and mostly in Syracuse, doing repair work for Niagara Mohawk. That was all through the union, Local 1249 of the Iron Workers.
Were you drafted?
Not Iron Workers.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Not Iron, International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, 1249.
Were you drafted, or did you enlist in the
I was drafted, and I got my call to report in February of
From what year, please?
1943.
Okay.
And I entered the service in March 1943. I had a week home between the law there, 27th and 2nd.
Could you tell us where you went for your basic training and explain your basic training?
We went for induction to Utica, New York, and then from Utica we went to Fort Niagara. From Fort Niagara they took us by train to Camp Swift, Texas, which was a new camp outside of Bastrop, Texas. That would be I think it's northeast of Austin, Texas. There was a new camp there. The 97th Infantry Division was being formed there, and mostly all us guys from the north were sent down there. We had 8 to 12 weeks of training there, basic training. I ended up in the communications section. I being out of Local 1249, they figured I had something to do with line work, so I ended up doing my basic training in that part.
How did your basic training in the American Army compare to that in the Canadian Army?
Well, they were much more stricter in the Canadian Army. A corporal was just as high as a master sergeant there. He had a lot of authority. And in the States it was a little more lenient. It wasn't as strict. I found the training not as hard at all. So, yes.
Okay. How did you end up in the Paratroopers.
I came home on a furlough. Meanwhile, before I was drafted, I got married. And my wife came down to visit me for a while, in Texas. And then when my furlough came, I came back to Syracuse. And then after my furlough, I noticed this guy prancing up and down the train here with some outfit he was in. We couldn't figure out what outfit he was with. He had a hat on, cocky ways, and he had boots on, his blouse, Man, he looked terrific. And then when he told me he was getting $50 a month more than as a private, I said, well, I think I'm going to look into that. So when I got back, I put in for my transfer. And in the outfit that I was in, being in communications, I could only go into the signal, into the Air Force or, the paratroops. Some, paratroops like that. So I joined the paratroops.
What extra basic training did you receive, and where did you receive that?
Well, I got my, after I got back to camp, I put my application in about a month later. Around August the 13th, 1,300 hours, 13 of us left Camp Swift, Texas for Fort Benning, Georgia. And then I had to start training all over again. And this was basic communication training, Airborne. And it was not till around November that we got into jump school. Meanwhile, all that summer we trained, physical training, and we were working, putting up a camp, and this and that. It was all about military strategy and stuff like that. Airborne-wise, we were getting airborne infantry training, and different, shooting different weapons and stuff like that. And we entered jump school around the latter part of November. Around November 2nd, and it took 4 weeks to go through jump school, and we received our wings, I think it was around December 2nd, and we were given 14-day furloughs to come home after our graduation. And when we got home, my wife and we had a little baby, and my baby was born while I was in jump school. I couldn't come home because I couldn't interrupt my training there. They wouldn't let me go. So I met my baby, and then we went up north to visit for a few days, and then we came back. And meanwhile, I had received this buddy of mine from Rochester that rode back with me said that asked me, he says, "Did you get a notice to come back to camp?" I said, "No." I said, "Did you?" He says, "Yeah." He says, "I got a telegram." He says, "I was only home a couple of days." So I thought he was just kidding me. I got back to camp. When we did get back to camp, there was nobody there. They had moved out. And they had moved to the Alabama area, and we're getting ready to ship away from Fort Benning. And first thing my company commander said when he saw me, reported back to the camp, I finally caught up to them. He said, "Did you get the telegram to come home to report?" I says, "No." He just smiled a little bit, I says, "You sure?" I said, "Yeah, sure," which I didn't know anything about. It wasn't until years later when I got out of the service, I asked my dad, I said, "Did I ever get a telegram?" He said, "Yeah." He says, "The telegram came in about 2 days after you were home." He said, "Heck," he says, "I tore it up." He says, "You just got here." He says, "They wanted you to report back to camp." So anyway, that was the story in that deal there. Anyway, we got back to camp, and we stayed for the holidays. Part of the bunch of us went to Atlanta. I went there for Christmas, Atlanta, and the other bunch went New Year's. And then right after that, we moved out of Fort Benning. We moved to Fort Meade. Maryland. Meanwhile, my wife came to Baltimore. My mother was living there at that time. That's where their home was. And she stayed there, and I was able to get a pass every night while I was in Meade. And then when we left Meade, around about the 15th of January, I could not go out on pass anymore, and I was told that we were going to be getting ready to move out. And he says, "Tell your wife, that you won't be seeing her for a while." So we ended up at Hampton Roads, Norfolk, Virginia, and I ended up on Cape Town Castle. Not Cape Town Castle. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. It's the British ship John Hart Benton. 250 of us got on there. And we were on that, we had loaded on that ship in the afternoon, and we heard this music, and band playing, marching music. We looked down the street, and we could see some soldiers marching up there, and we saw these guards on the side with shotguns. And ended up, we had 250 shotgun volunteers with us on that ship to go ship overseas. These guys were out of the stockade, and they marched them right onto the Victory ship and posted guards. And they posted those guards on there till we got ready to pull out. And when we pulled out of there, we joined the convoy, and about three days later, we woke up one morning, we were all alone. The convoy had left us, so we had gone in a different area, different direction. And took us 18 days, we ended up in Casablanca, French Morocco. And we stayed in French Morocco a couple of weeks, and then we went by train from there to Algiers. There was a camp outside there near an air base there. And then about a week or so later, we went by plane to Naples, Italy. And then from there, I ended up in Venafro. I was attached to the H Company 504th Parachute Infantry Regiment of the 82nd Airborne Division.
Could I go back a second?
Yes.
These 200 prisoners that were put on, did you have any inner reaction with them? Or
Oh yes,
while you were
wonderful.
on
We had
ship?
wonderful. We got along great with them. I was made acting corporal. I had charge of the KP on the ship, and I made sure that the guys all reported for work duty, on a KP work roster. Oh yes, I had no problems with them. 3 days out, 3 miles out, and I never saw so many pistols showed up on these guys. I don't know where they got them from. They had them. They had holsters, underarm holsters there. And oh yeah, we got along great with them. No problems.
Were they stationed with your unit, or were
No.
they put into other units?
No.
Okay.
We lost track of them when we got to Casablanca.
Okay.
Among them was Rita Hayward's brother, and he said that he was not part of those guys, but he still got on the ship with them. So he says he didn't have nothing to do with those guys.
I'm sorry, I just
Yeah.
was wondering.
So yeah, we ended up in, like I said, when I joined the outfit, we came back to Naples Harbor, and we got on LCIs, and we went to Anzio, on the Anzio beachhead, to go as replacements for the 504th Parachute Infantry Regiments, which were fighting in Anzio beachhead. And that was in the latter part of February when we got there. And then we stayed there in February, stayed there till the latter part of April. The first part of April, we came back to Naples, and they put us in a camp just north of Naples called Pozzolia. There was a big college there, College of Siena. It's named after Mussolini's son-in-law. And we stayed there till around April. We left April, I think it was Easter Sunday when we left anyway. We left Easter Sunday on the Cape Town Castle to go to England. And we got in England, we left Naples on April 11th. We arrived in Liverpool, England on April 22nd. And we did extensive training there in England for the Normandy invasion. We did all their problem jumping. We did all their anything to do with dispersal areas and tight flight formations for the planes and this and that. We were involved in that. We usually jumped in mass jumps. We jumped 2 men to a plane, and all different things like that. We had to do all those problems, which they figured they would encounter in the Normandy invasion. We did not nick Normandy because the big brass figured that our men were all so new. They had lost most of the men in Anzio. And so the 2 other outfits took our place. the 507th and the 508th Parachute Infantry Regiments took our place, and they went into the 82nd for the Normandy deal. So we stayed in England training, and then when the troops came back from Normandy, and then we resumed our regular training, and we had more or less like a furlough for a while, and different places we went. Then we started training for more missions. There was always training, airborne training, jumping. I did a lot of jumps in Holland, in England, and practice jumps. And then we got ready for. We had about 4 or 5 different alarms to go on a mission, and they were canceled each time because the army was moving so fast on France in the mainland there. He ended up this one time around about the 15th of September. We went back to Spanhall Airport, and we were closeted in, and we couldn't leave or nothing, and everything. We were just stuck in that camp, and we knew something was coming up. And we were getting lectures, from intelligence and stuff like that. And it ended up about 16th, 15th, definitely we knew we were going on a mission. We were going in Netherlands, Holland. And we started getting our equipment ready. And we had our equipment ready, but we were getting more or less honing down for our mission. And we left Spanhall Sunday morning, September 17th, about 10 o'clock. About 1 o'clock is 10 o'clock when we left. We landed in Holland around about 1:17, something like that, 1:15. We jumped behind lines about 65 miles behind the German lines. We landed in Grove, Holland. On our way over, it was quite a sight to see all those planes. And in fact, this was the first daylight mission in history, airborne history, in American airborne history. And we had planes like, my God, when we were jumping in Holland, they were still leaving the airport in England. And it seemed like you could just walk on the planes and gliders. There was so many planes in the air. We had freighter escorts. As we hit the mainland, we got some artillery, flak, from flak stations, and the fighter planes went right to work on them, knocked them right out. And as we were going in, you could see the people sitting on the roofs there waving to us. And, they knew something big was coming on. Being Sunday, everybody was to home, and not working. And then when we got near, just 2 miles inland, I looked out the window, my company commander and I looked out the window. I was sitting next to him by the door, and I said, "Jeepers," I says, "we're not at the DZ yet. These guys are starting to jump." And we noticed the plane next to us was on fire. The bottom was all on fire, and guys were jumping through it. And they had shot one of the planes down, and we could see it go down, and we lost track of it. It was right next to ours. And one of my buddies was in that. All of my buddies, but one that I very chummed around with quite a while. And I met him 34 years later, and he had retired from the CIA. He came in to tell me all about it and verified what happened. Was that it took fire, and underneath the plane, these equipment bundles had these competitions. I think it was C4 then. C4 or C2, I think it was C4. And that caught on fire, and it melted the bottom of the plane, so they just fell right through. They hooked on their static lines and fell right through. So most of them were captured. I think an exception of 2 guys showed up. That about a month later, they rejoined our outfit. They hid in with the Dutch underground. And as we were going in, a little while later, we were talking, the first sergeant and I were talking about the plane, what happened. And we were leaning, talking to each other, and all at once he flew up in the air and landed right in the middle of the aisle, the C-47. And looked around, and said, "What the heck's going on here, One of the guys looked at where he was sitting. There was a bullet hole right where he was sitting. It missed him, and the bullet went right up his chute. And the impact sent him flying right up to the middle of the floor. So it wasn't long after that we got to our DZ, and we were starting to get flak there from the bridges there, Groff Bridge. And when we got up to hook up, before we got there, we got up to get ready and check our equipment. And company commander told him, he says, his name was Sergeant Mike Hogan, First Sergeant Mike Hogan. He says, Mike, he says, you don't have to jump that chute. He says, you can go back to England. He says, like hell I am. He says, I'm getting the hell off this plane right now. So he jumped the chute there, and he's all right. We made our jump, and my static line, I had a radar bag with a radio in it, and a rope. And then when we got out the plane, I let the loose of the line, and it got broke. I think shrapnel cut it, because we were getting shrapnel from the bridge, flak shrapnel. They were trying to aim for the door, and I think it cut my line. Anyway, the radio went one way, I went the other. But coming down, the first sergeant hollered over, and I could hear him. We're looking around, for a few seconds. He says, "There's a guy behind that barn." He says, "That building." He says, "Watch out." So when I came in, I came in backwards, and I landed on an apple tree, and I had all my weight, all my gear. It just put me right to the ground, nice and easy, and no problem. Took my chute off, grabbed my Tommy gun, and I got a hold of this guy. There was just a young kid standing there. He was watching us jumping, wondering what's going on here, So I motioned to him with a wheelbarrow near the barn door, and I said, "Bring it over." And we loaded our gear on there, and he took it up to the main road for us. First Sergeant and I, we put all our stuff on there, and he wheeled it out for us. And the first thing I saw when I got there was a priest was there, and there were a lot of kids and parents around the road, and every one of them had either, the girls had orange ribbon, or the men had orange lapels, or something orange in their suit jacket there, to show that meant that they were going to help us. They would be our friends. That was Queen Wilhelmina's colors, orange. And we were told by the intelligence that they would help, whoever had that on would be helpers. They would be willing to help the Allies. So then that was about our first day on the jump.
You didn't receive much opposition on the ground?
We didn't receive too much opposition on the ground. We more or less, we had part of our regiment there, one company jumped on the south side of the bridge, and the rest of the battalion came in from the north side. So they more or less took care of that. And we had our mission accomplished before 5 o'clock that night. So from then on, it was mostly going from village to village and town to town and capturing other small bridges. We were getting ready we had to take these bridges for the British armor to go through, to go into Arnhem. See, the main force, the British jumped in Arnhem. They had 10,000 men jumped there. The 101st jumped in Eindhoven. We jumped in Nijmegen area. Our area was the Grove Bridge, south of Nijmegen. And we had to get all those bridges to make a direct link to Arnhem, and then the 30th Armored could go right through into Germany, the Ruhr Valley, or wherever they were going to go. And that was the idea.
Do you think it was a bridge too far?
No, I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I think that what happened is if the British had gone through like they were supposed to do, we could have had that problem.
So you think it was the British armor that was slow?
Yes. Yes, we, as it was, we ended up, this was on the 17th. On the 18th, we got resupplied. We got resupplied. We had, in the morning, I think it was, 18th, we had the gliders come in. And I was there on the ground. I had to meet, our company driver came in, and I had to lead them back to our area. So that was quite an experience there, being in the field when the gliders came in. They didn't have no brakes, They just plowed right along the field till it stopped. They stopped.
Did you ever get a ride on the glider?
No, and I never wanted one either. And my driver, when he got there, I found out from I guess it would be the landing officer in the field there. He said, "Stand right here." He says, your flight will be somewhere near in this area. And sure enough, just a few foot away from where this glider came in, that was he was on that. And when he got off that glider, they opened the side up, the front up, and he drove his Jeep out. He hollered over, he says, "Tarbell, over here." And I went over there, and he threw his hat on the ground and says, "Tarbell, that's the last goddamn time I'm ever going to ride in them things. I guess he had quite a ride coming over. But anyway, we had, as I said, and then we got resupplied by B-24s. And one of the guys that, years later I found out, one of the guys resupplying us was a gunner, rear gunner on a B-24. It was a guy from up home that I knew very well. TV John Cook was his name. He never, it was a small world. Here, I'm on the ground receiving, helping to receive the supplies, and he's up there, the plane delivering it, But we never found that out till about 40 years later. So. But we got all our mission pretty well done. Mostly, we worked with the underground for a while here and there, riding from village to village and this and that, and we were accepted with just everybody, all the Dutch people and Dutch underground cooperated 100%. Everybody was just so happy to see us, willing to help. And first mission, we went out in this little town. We went out, we had one truck, we came back with motorcycles, we came back with a truck, another car, and you name it. And we even met the Dutch underground there, and they drove us around and looking for pockets of Germans. And it was just unbelievable, because we'd never seen anybody help us like that in all the other places that we've been. And we never got that cooperation from any other country as we did in Holland. And then around about the 18th, the 19th, the British showed up at the bridge, and we heard early in the morning that they were coming in. So I went out early in the morning with some of the other guys. We sat on the bridge waiting for them to come in, and we were just sitting there waiting and milling around and smoking and talking. And one of the guys, civilians, came up. He says, he says they had an office down there. He pointed down at the valley below the bridge. He says that was their office there. He says, so geez, three of the guys run down. I went down with them, and by the time I got down there, they had everything all cleared off. They took the mementos off the table. All that was left was the flag behind the desk there. So I took that and I folded that up and put it on sign here. And I still got that flag from that bridge. That was from the guard staff there that had their office there. And we stayed there for, I think it was that afternoon. That was the 19th. And we got back to camp, and we got back to the area where we were staying. And we had to move out. We had to move out towards Nijmegen, the city of Nijmegen, which was just a few miles. But we moved out, and we ended up in, I don't remember if we got trucked out there or not, but anyway, we ended up in, of course, at that time we didn't know that they were having such a hard time on the Nijmegen Bridge on the Wall River. And they had the south end, they were trying to get the south end, it was heavily fortified. So they were able to get the railroad bridge, part of the railroad bridge. And on the main bridge, they were having a fierce fight, both ends. The SS, were there, when the 9th and the 10th SS Panzer divisions were stationed there. And they were really, Bittrick was the commanding general there, General Bittrick of the SS. And we ended up, they said that they'd have to make a river crossing and get in the north end of the bridges in order to take over the bridge. So they told us finally, that we were going to make that the following day, really, well, it wasn't until the following day, the 20th, that early in the morning we found out we were going to make a river crossing. And they said that there's assault boats coming up that we're going to use. So we got ready for the river crossing. I was on the first wave, H Company. I Company, H and I Company made the first wave.
What kind of assault boats?
We ended up with, when the dead arrived, we kept waiting all morning for those boats. And finally, around about 3 o'clock, pretty near 2:30, 3 o'clock, they showed up. And they were accordion canvas boats with plywood bottoms. And they had sticks that you turned counterclockwise to station, to spread them out like accordion, to open them up and to make a stable. And God, they were just nothing but good canvas, made out of canvas. And I think they're supposed to have had, I don't know how many paddles they were supposed to have had, but we ended up with 16 men, 13 men to each boat, 3 engineers to help, navigate the boat. They had little bitty motors on them there, and they weren't worth a crap. They didn't realize how bad, you get 16 people on that boat, and you got over 10 mile an hour current, and they didn't figure on that. So anyway, when we started down, my company commander and I was right behind him, and we grabbed the boat. Each one we took on each side, and we ran down the bank, and all at once he threw his gear off, and he dove right into the river there. We stopped, and he dove right in. One of the guys on the other side had fallen in, and he was drowning with all his equipment on. So when our company commander threw his gear off, he dove in and got him up to shore, and we helped him back up. So then, we jumped in whatever boats we could, and it was just a fiasco. We got out just a little way, and it was just like rain. They opened up on machine guns on us, and the water was just rippled, just like water. Water was falling on it. And they threw machine guns, they threw mortars, they threw 88s, you name it. Out of the 26 assault boats we had, there were only 11 that were serviceable when we got to the other side. Most of them were either sunk or the guys were all killed and this and that. We lost half our company there. And when we got, the boat right next to me took a direct hit. And I could still see the guy, as I was turning and paddling. I was trying to count cadence with these guys. Because when we first started out, the boat was going one way and then the other and this and that. The guys were not used to paddling boat. I don't think that some of them had never even been on a river or something like that, with a boat. We had quite a time navigating, and finally we got somewhere near decent. So I was counting cadence, like left, right, trying to keep together, at the same time. And we started going across all right, and we finally did get on the other side. But about midway across there, I looked on the side there, and I see my buddy stand up, and he just looked at me, and he's like as if, like as if he'd given up, and I turned, he was gone. And the boat was gone too. And I could still see that look on his face, his eyes, it was eye contact. They never found his body till way after the war. I think it was after the war. They found it up alongside the bank, further down the Wall River. So we finally did get to the other side, and we fought our way up to the canal. At one time I ended up with Colonel Cook and Captain Keith. And we were fighting wherever we could. We were all kind of mixed up, We just were not, there was so many casualties and things that went on that we tried to regroup as we went in, fighting inland towards the bridges. And to make a long story short, we finally ended up, I met one guy, one of my buddies there came by, and he says, look, he's got another Purple Heart. He had his thumb shot off, Just a few minutes later there, I see his body on the other side of the building, and he was killed. So he got 2 Purple Hearts that day. And we ended up on a railroad bridge. My company commander was there, and my executive officer were there, and each porthole they were there, and we were passing gamma grenades to them. And we had a lot of Germans trapped in the middle of the bridge. The guys that were shooting at us as we were crossing the river.
What kind of grenades did you say?
Gamma grenades. Composition C2, C4, C2. We made them up ourselves, pound and a half, pound, whatever. They're concussion grenades.
Okay.
And when you throw that, it's got a little metal belt on it. And you throw that with lead weight on the end. While it's in the air, that belt comes off and it pulls that lead pen out, and that's going to go off. Once you stop it, it's going to go off. So we did quite a job with that. We used up most of our gamma grenades because they would rush us. And as they would rush us, we would throw the gamma grenades at them. And They had quite a few casualties there on that bridge. The Germans did. They had over 264 on the bridge, and I don't know how many jumped over on the side. Yeah, they had those bridges loaded on the girders and every place else, and they really ambushed us coming across, but we caught them when we got to the bridge because we sealed the north end off, and by that time the south end was sealed off by the 505th Pressured Infantry Regiment. And then finally, towards evening, we fought there, and then towards evening we ended up to the north end of the they call it the main bridge. This was the railroad bridge we fought first. The main bridge where the tanks would come across. And that's where we ended up there that evening. And then when the British we took over that area there, the I Company was there, the I Company commander, and some of our platoons took it over. And we ended up all up there, and the rest of H Company. And we see the tanks come across, and they didn't go any further than just to the end of the bridge. They said that one of the tanks got hit, so they said, well, that's all right, keep on going. One of the officers says, we'll knock that gun out for you, keep on going to Arnhem. See, the reason that we were doing this was that the British Airborne was being annihilated in Arnhem. There was 10,000 of them there, and they had run right on top of a nest of panzers, which they didn't. They came in. They were fighting for that bridge, and the rest of them were being isolated on the other side of the river. So the tanks had to get there to help them to fight to get that bridge and to relieve those guys there. And they stopped right at Nijmegen. They didn't go any further there. So the next morning, we fanned it out. We may set up a CP. I think it was around the 21st or the 22nd that we pulled back. But before we pulled back, we had the following day we had a CP where we were staying, and I had my SCR 300 radio. That was my job. I was an SCR 300 communication man, and my job, I was a sergeant. My job was to make sure that we had company communications from company to platoons to outposts. I'd make sure that we had that. And we had the SCR 300 for battalion communication. So the following morning there, we were trying to see how many casualties we had at the CP we were at. The company clerk and I were on, I would call, once in a while when battalion called, I would contact them by radio. And then I was using the phone line to contact the different platoons and see what their casualties were. And we were writing the guys' names on the list. And Sheldon was writing, our company clerk, he was writing the names of the guys. And then we started getting shells, getting closer and closer to our CP. And the first sergeant had he was downstairs in this building. He says, Tarbell, you better bring that radio down here. I think he says they might have zeroed in on your set. He says they're getting closer and closer to us. So when we got, we bent over to pick up the radio. Sheldon and I, our heads were together, and a shell came in the courtyard right behind me. And the shrapnel came through the window, missed me, hit Sheldon in the forehead, and killed him instantly. Knocked his head, it blew his head off, the back of his head off. And hit three other guys on the other end of the building. There was Rosser, I think it was Keith, and Zimmerman. They all got just slightly wounded. It never touched me. I don't know how it missed me. And then first sergeant came up, and so the worst part of that deal was having to put Sheldon's name on that list that he was making out. We had 54 men then, and we ended up, he was a 50-50 casualty from our company for those 2 days. And that was the hardest part, was getting his name on that list there. So I got downstairs, and the company commander says, called a medic over, says, give him something to calm him down, because I was just about ready to, do something. And I went right to sleep. He says, go to the medics, lay down here, rest up. I went right to sleep. I slept. Finally, just about getting dark, and company commander woke me up. He said, grab your Tommy gun. I said, let's go check the position. So I felt good then, felt better then, you know. But we stayed there a couple days. A day or so later, we pulled back out, and those tanks and those guys were still in the same area, north of the bridge. They had never moved. And we didn't cut into that too well. We figured they'd be in and all the way over in towards Arnhem or someplace. We lost all those men for nothing, really. So we came back and walked across the bridge, and then we got onto some ducks that were there, amphibious trucks, and they trucked us back to Division Reserve area. And then after that, we had a lot of fighting in different, we ended up in defensive setups. And we fought, which was supposed to be a 2-day mission, and we ended up getting relieved on the 13th to 12th of November. We went there from September 17th to the 12th of November. We were relieved by the Canadian Army. But in between that time, we lost a lot of men, you know, from shrapnel, from mines, and from artillery, barrages, mortars, being on patrols. And a lot of things happened in that time there, you know. We had one time we had an outpost way out in Denhovel Woods. There was a fierce counterattack there by the SS, and there was a lot of fighting there. And we had an outpost way out there, and they lost their communications. So I had to go out that night, and I had to feel the line. I didn't know where it was. I had to find my way out there by following the lines. And as I got near this building, the barn, I found a break. And every time I tried to fix it, I would get shocked. If you know what, trying to fix a communication line. It wasn't until years later my buddy was telling me, he says, yeah, he says the lieutenant was on the floor there, he says he was just grinding away on that field phone. You know, I was getting shocked. Finally I was able to repair it. But meanwhile, the Germans across one side of the road started shooting at me, and some of our men started shooting at back. You know, here I'm between the devil and the deep blue sea here, and finally, when I got the line fixed, the sergeant came out, Rosengrantz was his name. He says, Tarbell, come on in, it's all right now. They quit. Once they quit shooting, our guys quit shooting, the Germans stopped too. So I went in and he says, come on in, have a cup of coffee. I said, I'm getting the hell out of here. So I said, last time I saw Rosie, he got killed the following day. He was killed. And we had quite a few guys lost there. And then the following night, I think it was the following night, they sent a patrol out, and they wanted to get a prisoner, and they went to this one building there in a barn or some building. This lieutenant was coming out to take a leak, and they grabbed him, German lieutenant or captain. I think he was a first lieutenant. And that time, in our area, there was a grenade fight in one of the buildings, and one of the guys got killed. Rice was his name. They had a grenade fight in there. There was 2 guys in this building, Sergeant Rice and Bayer, and I think it was a private Bayer, or Corporal Bayer, private I think. They started, they would throw the hand grenades in there, and they were watching for each other's back, and they would throw it back out. Finally somebody threw one grenade, and it landed behind Rice's back, and it blew up and killed him. So we heard about it, so the company commander and I went out there, and we saw him, his body right there on a stretch outside the building. And he was pretty broken up about it, the company commander, because he was a well-liked kid, well-liked guy. And just then, who comes in? The patrol came in with this captain, or a lieutenant, German lieutenant. And the company commander says, Tarbell, he says, let's get this guy out of here before he gets killed here, because we needed him for interrogation. So we took him back to battalion, and there was an interpreter there, or he was with the intelligence. Fred Tonjos interrogated him. Captain Keep was there, Colonel Cook was there, and Captain Capel and myself. And the guy couldn't speak English. He couldn't understand English. He couldn't understand nothing. So he says, the Captain Capel says, Colonel, he says, let's all go in the other room and let's have the Indian work on him. He says, turned around to me and, loud and firm enough voice, He says, Tarbell, he says, get him in the guts. He said, work in the guts on him. God, I was surprised how that guy spoke such good English right after that. And let me tell you, I was. He says, let the Indian work on him. He said, I was one happy Indian myself, because he could speak English. Because, I couldn't. I would have had to do it, but oh my God, that would have been awful to if I had to. But I was sure happy that he spoke good English. And he gave out to some machine gun positions and stuff like that, Years later, he mentioned that he met the Lieutenant Carmichael. He says, you guys accused me of my men killing that sergeant. He says, that was not my patrol. He says, that was an entirely different patrol that had to fight there, But they were going to kill him. They would have killed him if we had left him there. His men would have, the guys. So anyway, instances like that, guys would go out and you go out on combat patrol and you get guys wounded, guys get killed, and it was just trench warfare. Oh, another funny instance what happened one time. There was a family of Dutch that were supposed to be moved to Belgium. Instead of moving them to Belgium, they moved them out towards the front lines where we were fighting. So they were staying in a barn, and whenever we came off the front line, come back to the rear, I used to stop in and visit these people. They were a bunch of kids, and we got to be very friendly with them. They were the Smulders family. In fact, I'm still in contact with them right to this day. But anyway, one day I didn't come in there, and they said, where's Tarbell? Where's Tarbell? One of the guys says, from another company, I guess, says, Albert got killed last night in patrol. Well, there was another Albert, So I went in the following day and to say hello to the kids. They were just little kids. And there was two boys who had grown up, and they were 14, 15-year-old girls and little kids. Younger than that. There was about 5 or 6 of them all together. And they were saying a rosary for my demise. And I walked in, all hell broke loose. Oh, they were so happy to see me that they gave me a silver rosary beads, and I still got that rosary beads yet for that. I carried it all the way through. And then another time we were in a bivouac area. What we call a bivouac area, we were like in a big circle. And when we went in like what we call a bivouac or rear, we went to the center of that circle because we had troops all the way around, airborne operation, and that's how you do it. And we were getting shot with these Nibelwerfers. God, and they would call them screaming mimes. They were what they call, I think they're 9-barrel mortars. And they would fall all over the place, here, there, and everywhere, but they made the weirdest sounds coming in. And then when they came in, and God, I noticed this old cat that came around, and I love strays. I would give him milk or whatever I could find, I'd give him bits of my food. He was always sitting inside there, their dugout. We had a good dugout there where we stayed. He was inside there, and finally one day Clark Fuller says, let's watch that cat. He says, I think he knows something, says, about them Nibelwerfers. The cat his ears were all dripped up, and he was deaf. Yet he could hear those Nibelwerfers before they'd start, before they'd land. He could, all at once his tail went straight up, and he had to be in line for our foxhole, and we followed him. Well, after that, and then the Nibelwerfers came in after we were inside. After that, I'd holler, incoming mail, let's go, boy, and everybody scattered. And that was a comical thing there. When we went back on land, I don't know what happened to that cat, but we sure took good care of him there, And another, you get nice things that you think about it afterwards, that you like to talk about that happened, And, it's just one of those things there that talk about it afterwards, you know, and it made you feel good. And we stayed there till, let's see, I think it was, we were supposed to be relieved the 11th of November by the Canadians. And at 11 o'clock, the company commander says, let's shoot all that extra ammo out. Let's shoot it towards the German line. We shot it towards the German line, and I says, Captain, I says, what if they decide not to relieve us tonight? Yeah, I said, that's a possibility here. So he said, call them back, just cut it out. So we got a hold of the platoons there, and they stopped, and we ended up getting relief the following day. And just things like that, you know, that. When we ended up back in France, we went to France. Cesson, France, French Army Barracks, we ended up there. We ended up, well, we got relieved on the 12th, so we headed right through Belgium, right into France by trucks. Then, do you want to keep on going?
Sure.
And then we ended up, well, we ended up licking our wounds, you know, and getting replacements and stuff. We had a lot of replacements to do, you know. Most of our company was wiped out. And we got different duties to do, and they were sending some guys, the old guys, on leave to Paris, some of the older men. They were going to Paris.
Were you one of the old guys?
No, I was a replacement, see. I was then a replacement.
Oh,
There was guys older than me, see, from Sicily.
Yeah.
Sicily, yeah. And so I had nice duty, though. I was on shoot patrol whenever I was not. You see, my job was, on the combat, was a communication sergeant. We manned three of us sergeants in the company. We manned the switchboards. We took care of the switchboard, took a turn, and we did any line communication and voice communication by radio. And we took care of the company commander, like a bodyguard. When we were not on one duty or that, you know, you worked as like a bodyguard for the company commander. Wherever you went, and that. That's what our job consisted of. There was Sergeant Britt, myself, and Sergeant Fullerwell. We had a rank of buck sergeant, and our Sergeant Clark Fuller was our immediate sergeant. He was a staff sergeant. So that way we had to set up there, and when I got ahead of myself once on the night of that when I went to the outpost, and they were having a counterattack on that Van Hove Woods, and everybody was on edge because there was an awful fierce fighting there. Everybody was involved in it. There was, during the day, there was an AT gun that set up just across the road from us. And there was, I think, 5 guys in it. I think it was a 57 millimeter. And there, we watched the first sergeant over watched them set up from our CP. And all at once, they got one shot off, and a few seconds later they had a direct hit from a self-propelled gun, German self-propelled gun. And we went over there to check the guys, and they were all dead. All 5 of them were all dead. It was just a direct hit. It killed all of them. Even though we figured, you know, well, they're gone, and let's see if we can at least get the wristwatches. Even the wristwatches, the glass was all busted in that too. It's just, it was no good. So we started back, and between our that gun position and our CP, there was a haystack. And meanwhile, with all this fighting going on, we had foxholes dug around her in case we got overran. You know, we could fight from there. Well, that SP gun saw us walk away from that gun position and going towards the haystack. They must have figured we had another gun set up near there. And all at once we could hear that shot coming, and we dove behind that, and you know, behind that haystack right into that deep pit. And we had about 7 or 8 shots fired at us. And you talk about being shot at point blank by an 88. That's an awful weird feeling. You could hear that shot, and then you could hear that crack, so it hit, just like a rifle. Man, I'm telling you, I never hugged that ground so fast. I drove down that ground, and who the hell did I find underneath there? But my first sergeant, all 6'4" of them underneath me already. Boy, and we stayed there, and they just tore that. They just obligated that haystack. But that was that same, when I came back that night from the outpost, I got into my sleeping bag, and after I reported to my sergeant, what happened, about being out the outpost, and the guy shooting at me, and the Germans shooting back. So I was just falling asleep in a sleeping bag, and I heard the first sergeant say, "Lieutenant, don't go out there." He says, "You'll get shot. Don't go out there. You leave them guys alone. They're okay." We had a new lieutenant that joined not too long, just before we were coming to Holland. And he wanted to check the guard outside. And he kept telling them, the lieutenant says, "You're going to get shot. You go out there." Sure enough, he wanted to go check the guard. He went out there and he got shot. And he died about 3 days later. He got shot by one of the guards. They were just, very on edge. So we're back to France. And I was pulling shoe patrol. This was around about the 17th of December. And we went up to Reims, France. That was where I was supposed to be doing the shoe patrol. I was working with the MPs. We had 2 non-coms from each company working with the MPs. We would get a hold of the paratroopers before they would be arrested by the MPs, so that they would fight the MPs instead of giving up to them. Whereas we could talk to them and they'd listen to us, But the paratroopers some of them were just like that, they didn't want nobody bossing them around. But they would listen to us, especially a non-com too, paratrooper, next to another paratrooper. And this one night, I think it was on the 17th, the night of the 17th, we were bringing the guys in, and they were going in from one cell to jail, right on through, right onto the trucks, and these guys were singing and raising hell in the truck, all drunk, taking it back to camp. And we didn't know what was going on, so when we got back to camp that morning, or early in the morning, I was going by the CP, and I was going up to my room, and I heard this one guy said, "Well, geez, Sarge, I've never fired an M1. And Koga says, "That's all right, son, you'll learn. You can learn fast with that." He says, "You'll learn. Where we're going, you'll learn fast." And when I got back to the barracks there, my bags were all packed and everything. My sergeant had packed all my gear and everything. I says, "We're going out on range today to fire?" He says, "Yeah." I says, "We're going on range, all right. We're going back on the front line." He says, "The Germans broke through." So that's when we rode into the Polish. That morning, about 8 o'clock that morning. Well, the rest of the night, we helped this orderly room guys distribute clothes and equipment, and get some of the guys signed up and assigned that were coming in. Lieutenant Majas had just come in from England with the replacements, and he had about 8 o'clock in the morning, the trucks started coming in, open top trucks, Air Force trucks, semi-tractor trailer trucks. We loaded on there, we took off. We didn't know where the hell we were going. We drove all that day. We got through, the end of the day there, we got up towards Bastogne. Then from Bastogne, they rerouted us. They said there's another outfit coming in to go there. The 101st was going to go there. So we went on through to, I can't think of the name of that place now. It was in Hoflange. It was going towards Raleigh, Belgium. Rallier, I guess they pronounce it, Rallier, Belgium. And nobody knew what was going on. We didn't know what was going on. We saw one guy coming out through the woods there, and we asked him, he's an non-com. Asked him, "What's going on? How's it around here?" He just threw his helmet on the ground and kept on going. He even talked to us. And there's quite a thing that was going on there. The Germans had broke through, and there was a lot of heavy fighting up on around Aachen, and not Aachen, but St. Vit, down through those areas there.
Okay, we're going to stop here for a second and change tapes.
Change tapes.
Okay.
Okay.
Where were we?
You were talking about you going back into the bulge area for that crossroads section,
Yeah.
and
Well, we ended up. Meanwhile, when we first got in there, we went Railier, Rahhier, I believe it's the name of the place where we first area where we stayed, and we were there. I think it was a day. Meanwhile, Colonel Pfeiffer's Panzer outfit was making trying to cross a bridge near Chennault, Belgium. And they sent the 1st Battalion in there, and they had a fierce fight there. And they stopped them anyway. G Company from our 3rd Battalion went in and helped them also. We ended up, our 3rd Battalion, we went into just across the valley from Chennault. Manchu, I think was the name of the place. Manchu. And as we got up on the top of this hill there, a knoll, we looked down on the side to our right. You could see 3 flak wagons up there. We never made much attention to it. And all at once, Lieutenant Rivers hollered out. He says, "Get those guys before they get to those flak wagons." We thought they were disabled flak wagons. They weren't. The Germans had left them and gone someplace, and they were running back there when they found out we were coming up this knoll. And we started shooting at them, and we couldn't reach them to get them. And they turned the flak guns on us, and they hit the trees above us. And oh man, they peppered our company. We must have lost over half of our company. We lost all the new officers we had. Nobody got killed. It was all shrapnel wounds, you know. And I think there's only one guy that got killed, and he took a direct hit. It was a captain from a service company. And another guy got hit in the leg, a direct hit. Other than that, they were mostly all shrapnel wounds and flak wounds, flak from the flak gun. We had quite a battle there most of the day. And we did finally end up into Chennault. And we got into Manchu, I guess we could call it. And we went into fighting all day, you know. You're all. I ended up helping carry the wounded back into the trucks. We had some trucks back there, and we took 3 truckloads of wounded. And those trucks couldn't get out either. We were more or less bottled up in there. We could move around on that knoll. We took over the knoll. We had all that knoll and on the sides there. And then we fanned it out. And towards dark, we fought in. And that evening, everybody was so tired out that I went over to check the trucks later. It was dark. And those guys were still there. And especially when one of my buddies, he had got hit in both legs and both arms. But they were flesh wounds. They were not, didn't break any bones. And he was walking back to the trucks, and I remember I wanted to check on him, see how he was. By that time, he couldn't move his arms or he couldn't move his legs, you know. It just stiffened all right up. And but they did finally, I guess, move them trucks later on, but at dark time they hadn't moved. They couldn't get them back to the medics. Anyway, we ended up in one building there after fighting most of the evening, and we fell asleep, and we just slept wherever we could in the building. And I woke up early in the morning, and I was snooping around. I went in the other room, in the living room in this building, and here was this guy laid out on the table. You know, God, I says, we're in a funeral home. Here's a guy all laid out, you know, funeral. So I told the guys, I said, let's get the hell out of here. I says, we're in a funeral home. Everybody got up and got the heck out of there. You know, 40 years later when I was back there, I asked one of the guys, I said, where's the funeral parlor here? I want to show my wife where I slept that night, and woke up and found that guy, and, you know, laying on the table, laid out on the table. He says, we don't have no funeral parlors here. He says, the first one is in Reims. He says, and then I told him about what happened, you know, then. But he said that was, they knew who the guy was. You know, they're history buffs, you know. They said that was so-and-so, he looked in the paper, that was so-and-so had died at that time of natural causes. And he was laid out in his home. This is where we were, see. So that kind of made me feel a bit better. But Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself, 40 years ahead. So after that Monsoon battle, we ended up in another CP, and there was, we had a lot of, our lines were very fluid here and there and this and that, sending out patrols. Nobody knew where everybody was, but we knew that we had stopped, what's his name, Colonel Pfeiffer's group from getting through Chenault in that area. And we, at this CP that we were at, there was a priest there, and there was a hired man, and supposed to be the farmer that owned it. I was kind of happy. I says, God, I says, I'm glad to see you. I says, the priest, I says, you'll be able to say Mass for us Christmas. Well, here it is, only a couple of days, Christmas time, right? No, he says, I can't do that. He says, I can't do that. He says, he says, I have to have an altar. He says, I should be in the church to say Mass. Done. I said, my God, I says, my chaplain said Mass on top of beer barrels, K rations, top of Jeep hoods, you name it, wherever you could, whatever you could use for a stand. And I told the company commander and first sergeant, I says, I don't think those guys are, I don't think they're what they are. I says, I think they're German soldiers. And just then over the radio, they said, spread the word, pass your word out. They said that they're dropping German paratroopers behind your line, So that, I don't know what become of those guys, but I had to notify the companies, that to watch out for paratroopers, German paratroopers. And so 40 years later, I met the priest at Chenault. I said, were there any priests here? How many priests were there here? He says, 2 of us. He says, I and a younger priest were here, and we stayed in the cellar with the women and kids all during your fighting days here. So those guys were not what they were. See, 40 years later, found out that they were not priests. But anyway, we moved out. There was fluid fighting. Our lines were very fluid here and there, moving around and this and that. You really didn't know who to make. We were trying to contact the American soldiers, American divisions, and this and that, and trying to contact our own 325. And I think I can't think of what the other outfits were. That American divisions that were near there. There was 2 divisions near there, and we went made our way towards. I guess it would be towards St. Vit, or in that general area, like Lease, and we went on through there. And we ended up in, on the 23rd of, on the 23rd, it was a sunny day, the first sunny day there was. I think it was the 23rd of December. And they had the P-38s came out, and they were raising Cain. And at this area where we had moved to, you could see way out, you could see, look down into the valley, you could see these German vehicles moving. I don't know which way they were going, but there was a lot of troop movement, and the P-38s were bombing them and strafing them, And then you had a lot of air activity that day. And then we ended up in some area there. Oh my God! After all day, the rest of the day, walking, it seemed like. And we just got settled in. And word came down that we had to move back out. And we had to go back all the way about, it seemed like about 10, 12 miles, right through cross country. And you could hear the tracks of the tanks, whether they were ours or Germans, I don't know. But, and then you could hear the trees being knocked down. Our engineers were knocking the trees as we were going through. They would knock the trees down, blocking the roads up. And every now and then I had a pair of pliers on me, PL-29s, and I would get called to the front. We would come across a fence. I'd cut the wires, cut the wire fence off so that we could come on through. We seemed like we walked most of that night, Christmas Eve. All that Christmas Eve that we walked. We got into Bra, and then we set up a defensive position. They said that it was a strategic withdrawal to consolidate our positions, more or less. That's what we were told. Because they said that the panzers, not panzers, but our tanks were coming in from the south, and they were bottling in the Germans. And that was a way for them to get out, you know what I mean? For our line to come out so that we could really hold them in. Well, we no sooner got set up, and we had one hell of a gunfight there. The SS was right on our ass as we got there at the Raw. And we were just on the outside of town there. And we set up Christmas Day. It was so damn cold Christmas Day. And we didn't have no water for coffee or nothing, you know. The pumps were all frozen up.
Did you have winter gear?
No. Well, some of us did, some of us didn't. We were, wherever piecemeal, we were getting it piecemeal, we still had our boots. And you go to sleep at night with wet shoes and in your sleeping bag and everything, and it would dry that way.
Did you have an overcoat or winter?
We ended up, we got our overcoat, yeah, we got a coat, yeah. We got overcoats, and well, we didn't have no shoes or bad shape, you know. We had mostly summer trading gear, and jumpsuits and jump boots. And guys were, we had, we got hit pretty hard quite a few times. I think it was day after Christmas Day. Or that same day, I took 3 prisoners in to battalion, SS guys. That's why we knew they were SS hitting us. And I turned them over. Just as I got to the CP, Colonel Cook was there, and he says, "Bring them over here." I took him over to him, and he took his 45 out, and they were still, you know, they were prisoners, but they were still pretty belligerent, you know. He took that 45 out and he shoved it in that first SS guy's mouth. All 3 of them landed right on their knees. I thought he was going to blow this guy. He said, "I'm blowing your effing head off." He says, boy, they got right on their knees, and all that morale went right out of them fast. And I was glad that he didn't do that, because, you know, you hate to see anything like that. I don't care who it was, you know. It kind of took me off guard, you know. Here was this, my colonel was going to kill these guys, you know, just. But anyway, they were prisoners, and we turned them over to the MPs. And that night, I think it was that same night, we heard some guy moaning and crying and moaning. He couldn't talk. The guy says in the yoke post, "What are you going to do?" And somebody says, "Let him walk through. Let him come out to him." We let him in, and he came into the CP. He had a grenade in his belt, and he had a hole. You could put your thumb right through his forehead, right in here, beside his head where the bullet had gone through. You could put your thumb right in that hole there. He was incoherent. One of the lieutenants says, "Better take him in the back and kill him. He's going to die anyway." And you could see the look on his face, you know. He says, you know, you could tell that he understood that, but he couldn't talk. You know, they had to kill him instead of, you know, to get him out of his suffering. I said, I'll take him back. I says, the medics. I and another guy took him back. I took him to the aid station, and they said, "Well, let him sit there. If he's alive in the morning, we'll send him to the hospital." I checked back in the morning, and one of the lieutenants checked back too. I didn't know this until later. Checked back to see if that guy was alive yet. He was alive yet. And they sent him. He says, "He's alive." He says, "He's on his way to the hospital. He's already gone." So they shipped him back. But he must have had one. If he was alive, he's had a headache ever since, I guess. But anyway, we had a lot of fighting there. And you know, it's kind of hard to the winter fighting, I think, is about the worst you can do. It's you freeze. One time we went on this area here, and I was so we stayed overnight in this one area. We marched during the day, and we got to this area, and we stayed overnight. We got in our sleeping bag, and I woke up early in the morning, and I felt so good. I was so warm, so nice and warm sleeping. It had snowed during the night. We were sleeping underneath these pine trees, and the snow had covered us just enough for insulation, like, you know. Our boots had dried out and everything, you know, and it was all wet when we got in there. And we got up, and they had hot meal for us there. We never did get our turkey. Christmas turkey. We never got no turkey. We didn't even get a hardly. I think it was days later before we got a warm meal. I think that was one of the first warm meals we had. And then we had what they call a warm meal. sea rations heated up in hot water. It was good though, and coffee, hot coffee. And we got ready, and then we started marching down the road. It was such a beautiful sight. It was bitter cold. It was such a beautiful sight to see. Here you're in this mountainous area. There's trees there, snow on the trees, and it was just, you could have been on vacation someplace. Except for when you got tired, you know, you had to take a break, take a 10 and have a cigarette. That's where your training comes in. Just when you think you can't take another step, you take a 10-minute break, and 10 minutes time you're right back up there, ready to go. That's where, with heavy training, that's where your hard training comes in later to pay off. When you're in good physical, then it gives you good physical condition. And we were always in good physical condition. And we got to this area here, and they said, put all your gear down here. There's a big hill right there, mountain-like. So we put all our gear there, and they said, we're going up here, you know, on an attack, and they'll bring our supplies, going to bring our equipment up to us. So we got up this hill here, and between the adrenaline and the climb of that hill, we were soaking wet when we got to the top. And when we got to the top, we didn't realize, we didn't know where we were. Half the time, you didn't know who the heck was the enemy, the cold or the Germans, you know. We starting to get cold, and we had a few skirmishes there, and a few guys got wounded, but we had nothing. We didn't have no warm clothes or nothing. Nobody brought up our equipment from down the foot of the hill, and we had one blanket in our company, and we spread that out at the CP, and we had 6 guys under there trying to keep warm, you know, wounded guys, you know, we covered them up with that. And there was a tree right nearby. I grabbed that tree, and I started walking around it. And I told all the other guys too, I says, don't you go to sleep. I says, it's going to be awful cold tonight. I says, if you go to sleep, I says, you're going to freeze. You're going to freeze your feet. You can freeze your hands. You might even freeze to death. I said, if you feel like getting warm and cozy, I says, get the heck out of there and start walking around. I started walking and held on to that tree, and I would doze off and hold on, doze off. You know, next thing you know, there was about 3 other guys on doing the same thing I was doing. And you can do that, walk and sleep. I just hung right onto that. And in the morning, those guys were, some of them that went to sleep, they were walking on their knees. That froze their foot, their hands. It was that cold, how cold that was. It was very cold. And we had penetrated behind the German lines. We didn't know we had walked so far back and over that mountain there. And the colonel walked by, and he was laughing, you know, and he says, look at this guy following me. He was a prisoner, German soldier had surrendered to him. The colonel was relieving himself when this guy was surrendered to him. Because we were all behind the line there, they didn't realize. I guess there was some artillery outfit, but we had gotten behind them. And we ended up that afternoon looking out down the valley, and there was, first there was a motorcade. There was a German motorcade, and we poured all the fire we could, and artillery and everything into it. We did get one of the last vehicles, I think it was, or next to the last vehicle. And there were some of Runsted's headquarters people in that van. There was a colonel in there. They were killed. And later on that afternoon, the caissons, there was some caissons, horse-drawn caissons, were moving out in the field way beyond. We could see them, and we called in artillery on them. And God, they just tried to pepper them there, you know. That's the first time I'd seen horse-drawn caissons. And they were, you know, sleighs, on sleighs, and horses. They used a lot of horses, you know, in World War II. Yeah. The Germans did. And then, well, from the distance that they were, we couldn't do nothing. All we could do was watch. And anyway, we ended up moving again and attacking and this and that. And, oh, God, it's just hard to tell where you were. Us being lowly GIs, you know, down at the bottom of the pole, we didn't know what really was going on. All we knew was, well, there's another area we got to hit again, another battle. And you never had no places or names. You only had coordinates in orders. They were only on coordinates. You weren't given no name. Like, well, you're going to go into Manoa today, or you're going to go to East Syracuse. All you were given was certain coordinates where you're going to go and this and that. And that's where we were. The others, we ended up a lot of bitter fighting, and then it was just about a short while after that, around, I think it was around about the 7th of January. We got, I was supposed to go back to report to the medics, and they said to go back to the medics and have your foot inspected for trench foot, for frozen foot, you know, make sure I was okay, and make sure to get some sleep. So I went back there and I saw Doc Kitchen and Dr. Shapiro, and they gave us we had a nice bath, all clean clothes, dried up, and had a nice meal, hot meal, coffee. And then we went to see the doctors, and they checked us over. And Doc Kitchen says, "What time you got back here, Tarbell?" He says, "What time you come and visit us?" You know, they were laughing, they were kidding around. And he gave us some Blue Heavens, they called it, pills. They said, "Drink your coffee. I'll get a hot cup of coffee here and take this, and then grab some blankets." They issued us some blankets. Says, "Go in the haymow." The aid station was in the haymow, and we 4 of us from the company were there, and we went into the haymow, and just as we took that Blue Heaven and coffee, we went in the haymow with our blankets, and there was an artillery outfit nearby us. We didn't know that, and they started blasting away. And I was saying to myself, how in the heck am I ever going to get any sleep with them guys, you know, blasting away? And that was the last thing I remember. I zonked right out. I woke up early in the morning. I heard a lot of commotion, you know, and I looked over the haymow, and God, there was a lot of stretchers and stretcher bearers and all like at the barn, you know. The barns way in Europe, the way they were was one area is like a house, then you had like an area away, and then the barn was attached to it. We were in a barn part up in the haymow, and then a passageway, they had these stretchers and stuff like that. So I looked over, and the guy looked just like my company commander in one of the stretchers there, and so I hurried down the ladder on the side there, and by that time they had him in a van. And see, now I get ahead of myself. When I was telling you about going to Paris on furlough, my buddy, Phil Foley, had come in from the 505th Parachute Infantry, and he joined our outfit. And he had 3 court-martials, and he was a holder of the Silver Star, and he also had a Purple Heart, and he was always after his 3rd medal, you know. And so when he would sometimes spell me up. He was with company headquarters and carry the radio and stuff like that. So when he rejoined us, that was on around the 6th of December, and he rejoined us. He came back, and he brought me a nice present. He brought me a pipe to smoke, and I like to smoke pipe when I could. And we had his Christmas packages, and we ate cookies from there. And he was telling me about his trip and this and that. And then that's when company commander says, "Foley's back. Let him take your place for tonight." He said, "You're all set." He said, "Go to the medics. Report to the medics." That's why I went to the medics, because Foley was going to take my place, cover for me. So when I saw the company commander in the stretcher in the ambulance, I said, "Captain Campbell, what happened?" He said, "Oh," he started crying. He was hurt pretty bad. He had been hit to the back, to the rectum and back, stuff like that. He says, "Foley got killed," he says, and just stuff like that, you know. The guy that took my place got killed. And he says, new company commander says, "Be good to him like you were to me." He says, "I don't know when I'll see you again," you know. So we had a little talk there, and then they took him away. We were waiting for our ride back to rejoin our outfit, and I noticed there was a stretcher there with a person there laying there, all covered up, and he had hobnail boots on. I figured him to be a German. I just went over there and I uncovered him, you know, to see who it was. It was a colonel. It was a United States colonel. It was Colonel Jurek from the 555th Parachute Infantry had been killed that day. The same time that my company commander got hit and Foley got killed. He had been killed that day. Jurek was, he was a commander of the 555, and they were, in fact, they were annihilated in the Bulge, and they broke up the division, the regiment, or the battalion, whatever they were. And anyway, we went back there, and then there was some more fighting, and God, always the cold weather, you know. And you just get settled in one place, and then you got to move again. And then word came down, we're being relieved. We're going to go for some R&R, not R&R, but some rest camp, like, you know. And they sent us to Remo Champs. And we were there, I think it was a week or 2 weeks. And God, that was so nice there. It was so nice. We went we stayed with an old couple, and they had 2 daughters. There was one that had just gotten out of jail. She was, German jail or whatever was run by the Germans anyway. She was feeding Allied airmen in the woods, sneaking food out there, and somebody squealed on her. Anyway, they had her in jail for a while. And this other woman, her husband was slave labor or forced labor in Germany. And the little 3-year-old girl, this was about 3 years old. Oh, they were so happy to receive us. Everybody just open arms, you know. And the first night we got there, Sergeant Britt and I stayed there. We got up there, and she gave us the top floor, their master bedroom, downed, blankets, pillows, even the mattresses, feathered, all goose downs, they have there in Europe. And we were just as we were falling asleep that first night, I could feel somebody poking around at the foot of my bed, raising the blanket up. It was the old lady. She had hot irons wrapped in blanket, and she put one under my foot and one under his foot, Britt's foot, to keep us warm. Boy, I says, can't believe this. God, this is living. And just as they went downstairs, they stayed in the cellar. The bus bomb went over, you could hear the everybody saying, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Because if it stops, it's going to come zoom right down. Well, they were going into Reims, and it wasn't too far away, about 15 miles away. You could feel that when it hit. You could feel that jar, and that was heaven. Oh, they were so nice to us. One day, the older girl says, "Can you get me an extra sleeping bag?" I says, "Yeah." She says, "Okay." She says, "Get it." I got it from the supply sergeant in front of me, and I gave it to her, and then that was it. And it was about almost 2 weeks we were there, I think. And word came down, we were moving out. That would be around about, let's see, the 28th, 27th, the 26th. The 26th or the 27th, we got word that we were moving out. By the 27th, we would be moving out. We were told on the 26th, the following day, be ready to move out. And we moved to St. Vit, outside of St. Vit. And there was a place there, I can't think of the name of it. We jumped off from there, and we went towards just below St. Vit. We went on an attack. That would be on the 28th. We made the attack on the 28th, and it was snowing, and we left early in the morning. And one company would lead. Our 3rd Battalion, we were leading in our area. We had H Company, we led first. Then, J Company led first, then we would jump, H Company would go ahead, J Company would fall back. We kept rotating like that. I Company would be next. And we ended up, I was carrying the radio, and then we kept taking turns, and the snow kept getting heavier and heavier and deeper. And one time we were walking parallel, I looked, and I says, look, I says, we got company, and there was a bunch of Germans walking just below us. They were going the same way we were, and I don't think they ever saw us. We didn't see them either. So I told Majalis, I says, hey, I says, Captain, Lieutenant, I says, we got a lot of company here. And boy, he turned right around, and he was just like a tomcat. Boy, just like he had rats cornered, I says, he didn't fight, they didn't want to fight, they surrendered. But he spaced his men right out. We just closed right in on him and turned them over to the MPs. They picked them up below. left them there as prisoners. We kept on going all that day. That's a long haul. I don't know how far we went. It was just knee deep in snow, sometimes waist deep, and you didn't know where the heck you were, or how good it was, or whether there was troops looking at you or waiting to ambush you. And then we heard when we stopped, the colonel got there on the phone. Colonel Tucker got on my phone for a while there, and he was talking to one of the other battalions and used my phone. And a lot of the guys were saying, the other officers were saying, the colonel never was up there. I verified it because he used my phone, my SCR 300. And the reason I remembered so well was he had such poor procedure to talk on a radio. You would think he would have good radio procedure, to talk, and he just talked any old way he wanted, as long as he got his messages through. Anyway, make a long story short, so we heard that there was some troops on their way to attack us. So we, at that time, one of the other guys says, I think it was Brett, says, I'll take the radio now. So we changed off. So he took the radio, and I grabbed my Tommy gun, and usually I would join the patrol if I could get away. If I'm not with the captain, or if I could get away from the captain, I would join a patrol, and it was just something to do, instead of just staying by idly. I went on a patrol, and we took 2 TDs with us that was with us, following us, and we had these guys hit on. Those must have been a company of them, over 200, about 300 maybe. We had them hit on. Magellan's platoon there, and they had one tank with them, but the tank didn't show up right away. We hit him head on. We killed every one of them. That's hard to believe. The tank came around. This was in Hirschbach. We went going into Hirschbach. The tank came around. We went into Hirschbach. Going into Hirschbach, this tank showed around the corner, and he would have really done the business on us. Magellan threw a gamma grenade on the tracks, disabled it. He took a fragmentation grenade, jumped up on the top, and he threw one down the hatch. He disabled this Mark V all by himself, 2 grenades. That has never been done that in World War II. It's just 2 gamma grenades and 1 man, disabled in the Mark V. And we had over 200 and around pretty close to 200 guys killed. We never got 1 casualty in our company. And they were going to put him in for the Congressional Medal of Honor for knocking out the tank single-handedly, because he saved our company. That tank would have just really done a number on us, because at that time one of the TDs had gotten into the ditch, and he was not in the position to fight him. In other words, he could not turn his turret enough, to take care of that guy there. So Magellan knocked that tank out. But anyway, when I got into Hirschbach, I was standing there at this burning building. There was a burning building across the road, and there was a tank right there, this knocked out tank. And I see this guy coming behind in the dark, with his hands up. And so I says, hey, we got a guy coming with his hands up. I said, let's shoot him. One of the guys says, let's shoot him. I said, no. I says, let him come in. I says, he wants to surrender. Let him come on in. I said, there might be more out there. And so he came in, and he has his hands up in the air, and I could see the Luger right here. I said, there's my prize right there. I'm not shooting him. He came right up there, and just then this young whippersnapper there, George Heeb, ran right up there, and he grabbed that Luger from his waist, and he surrendered. The guy surrendered, and a little while later, there was about 7 or 8 others came out of the darkness and surrendered. Now you see, they waited. Had we shot that guy, they would have probably shot at us. So they didn't give up. They surrendered. And this Heeb I'm talking about, he stayed in the army, and he retired as a colonel, and To this day, I still rib him about that. He still gives me presents and favors, you know. He says, I'm still beholden to you for that Luger, he says, you know. But, that was just one of those things. He was always following us around. He was new. He was new when he had joined the outfit there during the polls. And so we're still working on that Congressional Medal of Honor for Magellan. And at that time, it said, General Gavin says, we don't think we can give him, he did get the Silver Star for it, but he says we can't put him in for the Congressional Medal of Honor because there was no casualties. At that time. Now you would think that would work in reverse, Then, no, they would never. And then when we updated the award, the first award never mentioned about him knocking out the tank. All it said was the tank was also knocked out. But we're still working on it. It's worded different now, and we're still in negotiating with the awards boards. Hopefully he'll get it before he dies. He's 85 now, and he's had one heart operation and everything else. But anyway, we got out of that deal. There was a lot of heavy fighting that following day. That night, we spent cleaning out the buildings of cherries in the different buildings. And we got a lot of prisoners, so we put them all in a big barn, put guards around them. And right after that incident about the 7 guys that came out of the dark to give up, I went into this farmhouse where they had come from. And here was this table, it was all laid out with food. They were just getting ready to eat when all this commotion started. They never did finish their supper or something, or they never even started to eat. There was potatoes, fried potatoes there, home fries like. There's some brown bread. Of course, nobody likes brown bread. And there was bacon there, being a farm, and I think there was eggs there, I'm not sure. Anyway, boy, I sat right down there, and I and this other Ebe and the other guy, we sat down, we started eating. Just then, company commander and the first sergeant walked in and says, Tarbell, you're a hell of a man. You're a hell of a guy. You got all this food and you don't tell us. They sat down and we ate. We got through eating, and first sergeant says, I hope the food wasn't poisoned after we got through eating. But anyway, there's quite a bit of battling that day, and the following day we had a lot of fighting. We were held up at one time by a bunker, and they held up our whole outfit and machine guns, They were traversing fire and this and that. Finally, they ran out of ammunition. I was standing right by the bunker when they started coming out. All their hands raised up. They all wanted to surrender. Their ammunition was all gone. They were all old men. They were old men. And they showed us they gave us their wedding rings. They were giving us the wedding rings and showing us their children's pictures and wives' pictures, They thought we were going to kill them all, But we didn't. We just took them all prisoners. Put them in with the rest down there. But then we had some fierce fighting the following day, and real bad fighting. And I was outside the CP there, and there was a couple of soldiers brought up the sleigh, had two wounded soldiers in it, German soldiers, and 2 German prisoners were pulling it. And the Americans turned them over to us, And the first sergeant says, Tarbell says, take them to the medics. He says, take them down to the medics. And he said, grab somebody. He says, see if we can find somebody. I couldn't find anybody. He found a guy standing there. He said, come here. He says, come here, trooper. He says, give Sergeant Tarbell a hand here. He said, these guys to the medics. He says, okay. He walked over. And we went, he says, you go to the church. He says, that's where the medics are located. And we went to the medics. We got to the medics. Just as we got to the medics, a shell came in and landed right in the snowbank. That's the last thing I remember. Is I was flying in the air, and this other soldier that was helping me, guarding, he was between me and the church door. He blew us through the church door, and I come to. I was laying on my back. I come to, and I could hear somebody say, like that. And this voice says, "Oh, he's gone. He's finished. He's done." And then I felt my face, somebody kind of slapping it, like, you know. He says, "Oh, he's coming around. He'll be okay." I knew you were talking about me, you know. I said, "Oh my God!" I said, "What the heck happened?" I started wiggling my toes, you know, moving my hands, you know, see if I have my limbs, you know. And I sat up and I looked, and the guy who was next to me, I said, "How is he? He's dead." You know, he took the shock from me, you know. The concussion threw me right against him and through the door. We went through the door. I was just thrown in the air and landing against him. He took all the pressure and I killed him. And do you know that I got up from there and I went right back to the first sergeant. I says, "Who was that guy that you sent with me?" He says, "I don't know." He said, "I just grabbed him outside here." He was standing up there. To this day, I still don't know who that guy was. There's no way I could find out because we were moving all the time, you know, on the move, you know. And I think I got it narrowed down to one guy, I think it's in G Company there, that died on that day. You know, that one particular day. So that's things like that, you know, that happens, you know, and you know, you wonder, you know, how the heck come, you know. To this day, I don't know what happened to my four prisoners, the two wounded Germans and the two German prisoners pulling the sleigh. I don't know what happened to them. For all I know, they might have got killed there, or they may have just taken right off. I don't know. I never found out. But that's what happened that one day there, and it's just hard to figure out, you know, how that guy upstairs, you know, says it's not your time yet. And then after that, you know, there was a lot of winter fighting again. Keeps on right on going. And then we ended up through the Siegfried line. And, oh God, you know, on that Harrisburg mission there, we got over 300 prisoners and there was over 200 killed. And you know, I mean, it's just one of those things that happened, and it's unbelievable that nobody was wounded, nobody was hurt, no casualties. I mean, you know, nobody was killed. You know, in our company. And we went through we started fighting along the Siegfried line. And we had the Siegfried line, we had the bunkers to contend with. And one of the guys was very instrumental in getting, about the only way you could get those guys to surrender was if they ran out of ammunition, or if you could just coax them out of it. This Fritz Tanjos was one guy that was always instrumental in getting a lot of those guys out of there. I think one night there, I think they said he got around about 10, 12 bunkers that he tucked out the guys. He's a German himself, born in Germany, and he came to the States, or born in St. Louis, but of German descent, and he could speak perfect German. And then we ended up fighting here and there. We ended up small skirmishes. Then we ended up pulling back, going towards the rear, and we ended up in Schmidthof, Germany, near Aachen. And we're supposed to make a river crossing there again. Boy, nobody didn't look forward to that. And we're practicing how to do that and this and that crap. And then we got relieved from there. That was unusual, you know. We were going to make this mission, and then they relieved us, and we came by train back to France. But we didn't know at that time that they figured on us jumping in Berlin. Just the big brass, you know. Figured that, well, you know, if we're going to need those guys, they should put them off the line by now. And so that was around about the latter part of February. I think it was around, we were relieved around about the 21st from the Bulge. We fought all the way through there. And a lot of times they say that the Bulge was up to January 25th or something like that. There's no such thing. The most fierce fighting was after that. The coal and the troops. They say, well, the German troops are inferior. There is nobody inferior when you put him behind a loaded gun. I don't care who he is. There's no such thing as inferior. That guy will shoot at you and he will kill you. And you're still fighting him. You're still fighting a soldier. Anyway, we got relieved around the 21st, I think it was, of February. We went back to France, and we went to Lyon, France this time. We were stationed in Lyon. And we had, we were not back there too long. We had a lot of problems there, jumping, you know, and this and that. And the new planes were coming out. We had a jump. We had to make a jump in this field here, and it was a beautiful jump. Everybody jumped. Nobody got hurt except for the company commander. But in a 508, I think it was headquarters company had a runaway plane. The propellers had a runaway propeller, and it lost its altitude and it ran into a stick of guys and killed, I think, 6 or 7 guys and the lieutenant. And there were a bunch of dignitaries there too watching that jump. One of them was Discharged was there at that time. And so the company commander broke his ankle. And everybody else who came back, one of the guys refused to jump. Other than that, it was a very good jump. So that night, or that evening, we were all back in Lyon in barracks. This captain is walking around with a crutch, homemade crutch, walking around. He says, anybody want to jump tomorrow? Anybody want to jump? I said, what the heck want to jump for? We just got through jumping today. He says, the U.S. Air Force is here. It says they've got a new plane. They designed a new plane and they want veterans to try it out. I want combat veterans to try it out. It says it's a C-46. It's got twin doors, 2 doors, one on each side. You can use both doors going out at the same time. You can carry twice as many men and you can jump out twice as many at the same time. So I says, the first sergeant says, I'll volunteer to jump. Just for 2-day pass. I says, my buddy Shields, I says, Sergeant Shields, he'll volunteer too. I says, give us a 2-day pass. And I says, we'll take 2 Feathering with us, the guy that refused to jump. He was facing the court-martial. You know, he could get 10 years, you know. He was endangering the whole plane load of guys. So he says, okay, he said, I'll think about it. He says, that's off limits. He says, Soissons, he says, off limits. I says, that's all right, that's where we want to go. Nobody will bother us there. He says, not supposed to go there. He says, well, he says, get us past there. So, all right, he says, but you stay out of trouble. The next day we jumped. Beautiful jump. I followed the jump master, who was a lieutenant. And, but the Feather followed me and Shields followed him. We finally put him between us and jumped out. Beautiful jump. I could have stood up, landed standing up. And I asked the Feather, I says, why in the hell didn't you jump? I said, I didn't feel like it yesterday. He says, I feel like it today. He was one of those guys, you know, he was very predictable. You know. But he was a good soldier, though, in his own way. Anyway, that's one of the things that happened there. And then around about, I think it was around April 4th, I think we had Easter there. We spent Easter there, Easter Sunday. We left right after that. I think around the 4th of April. We went back on the line, north to Cologne, on the Rhine River, on the west side of the Rhine River. The 97th Infantry Division, of course we didn't know what was happening at that time, but afterwards we find out. The 97th Infantry Division was coming down through the south, and that was what was known as the Ruhr Pocket. And as they were working down the way down south, our position was to hold the Germans from coming across the Rhine River, you know, stay in that Ruhr Pocket. And there was quite a few skirmishes there, and we had a funny thing that happened there at one time. There we had a German, a boat come across the Rhine River under flag of truce. We got word that there's a boatload of Germans coming over in the flag of truce. And it ended up, there was a colonel, and a captain, and some enlisted men that rode across the river. And they brought him over to RCP. The colonel came over to RCP and the captain there. And he said, he had the captain as an interpreter. He spoke beautiful English. He spoke better English than I did. He said, we're here under flag of truce and we're protesting shelling, your forces shelling our hospital. We have a lot of wounded there. You know, so he says, well, that's not our department. He says, you know, our company commander says, you got higher ups coming. And so a guy from battalion showed up and he says, well, your fighting days are over, and all this and that crap and this and that. They took him, the colonel away to interrogated him, and he went over to a battalion or regiment, I don't know which, but they took him away from there. But anyway, I ended up with the captain, the interrogator. And at that time, there was a magazine, a Yank magazine on the table, and it showed our general, General Gavin's picture on the front page, you know, with all his decoration, this and that, and his patch and everything. And all this officer would say, captain would say, very interesting, very interesting, very interesting. I said, read this. It's very interesting. I said, where did you learn? I said, it's good English. Oh, he says, I used to be an editor of the English-speaking newspaper in Paris. He says, that was my job, he says, for the war, you know. So, yes. And they had a long talk, you know. So, I noticed that when I first saw this colonel, the doctor, he had all kinds of decorations on him. Oh, man, oh, man. And now they said, where are you going to put him for the night? I said, well, you can sleep on my bunk. I had my switchboard there and a radio there, and my room was right next to the brother, you know. I said, they can sleep in there. I had my eye on that. He's going to take his jacket off when he goes to sleep, and he's going to hand it on that chair. He's going to end up without a jacket the next morning. Those decorations. Anyway, that night, we had to go on a combat patrol. Of all the times, we had to go on a combat patrol. So I went over and it says, you're going on combat patrol tonight with Lieutenant Broadway, Rufus Broadway. He was a new officer in the outfit. He says, he's taking a combat patrol over, and you're going to take your radio. I said, okay. So we went over, and God, we went over, and it was nice and quiet. Nobody shot at us. And come to think of it, you know, they must have thought that was some Germans coming back, you know, that boat, you know. And when we got over there, and even the foxholes were empty. And we went on through the Bear Aspirin plant. I think it was a Bear Aspirin plant right across from us. And there was a big viaduct there. We went on through there, and then got into a firefight further up there, and they told us to hold tight right there. And a little while later, word came down that says, head back for the boats. Well, when we headed back for the boats, all those foxholes that were empty had soldiers in it this time. The Germans were in it. And they were peppering us, you know, shooting here and there. And as I got through that viaduct, just as I ran through the viaduct, and my guard, the guy that was guarding me, his name was Fred Hoffman. On a patrol like that, all I could carry was a radio and my .45. No other weapon. I'd have somebody guarding me, you know, in case I needed somebody to protect me. The fire came on through that viaduct, and I just heard it. And so you could tell it was machine gun fire, a burst. And I got back to the boat, and Fred was nowhere around. Hoffman was nowhere around. And we think to this day, you know, that it got him, and it, you know, the force of the shots pushed him right into the Rhine River, and the current was very swift there. We never found him, never found his body. And we got back to the other side of the river there, and I would try to get on the radio to call back, you know, our situation. And I started to talk, and somebody said, shut that goddamn thing off. I says, because, you know, on the river, you know, everything's quiet, you know, and you could hear it all over for miles, it seemed like. Stop that damn talking and keep quiet. And meanwhile, they're saying, how come you don't talk? Give us your status report. Give us a status report. We finally got back to the other side. Then we had to sweat out getting shot by our own men when we got back. But we made it back all right. And I finally got back to my CP. I'm reading wet from the Rhine River at the adrenaline. I lost my guard. He got killed. And there's the colonel sleeping in my bunk. He's got his jacket on. He's got his arms folded right over it, like as if he was protecting everything he had on his chest. And that was a hell of a night for me. But that was about the last combat patrol in the Rhine River that we had. And we met 3 years ago in Highlands, North Carolina, and we brought that up. This Broadway is a doctor, retired doctor, and he had us to his place in Highlands, North Carolina. And we had a nice get-together there. It was around May, the latter part of May. We had a beautiful get-together. And we had a wonderful time. But anyway, so we moved from that area there. Well, then another thing that happened there that I'll never forget, President Roosevelt died. And we were in that area there, holding position when he died.
What was your reaction to that?
Oh, everybody's so depressed, what are you going to do, We didn't know who this Truman was. We'd never heard of him. We didn't know, How many of us are politicians? Who of us, they're 18, 19, 20 years old. You're right from the farm or right from the country or right off the high school right into the army, You're not into politics that much, And we didn't know who the heck was going to be, who Truman was, So we ended up, that was one of the bad times, there's nothing you could do. We just stayed right in our area there in the holding position. And then finally we got orders to move out, and we went by train from there to Hamburg, Germany. And from Hamburg we were trucked down to, I think it was Heikdorf, or it's a funny name, it's right on the Elbe River.
Not Heidelberg.
No. It's a small town, Heidorf. It's on the Elbe River. And we made a river crossing there. Pontoons were already in place. 505 made the river crossing and pontoons were there when we got there. And we started fanning out. And just as we got on the other side of the pontoons onto the dry land, we see this tank hit a mine on the road. We were on the road then. And it took this 40-ton tank and just flipped it right over. That's how powerful the mine was. What they were sea mines. The Germans had planted sea mines. And they had put detonators in there that after maybe the 15th or the 10th or the 8th vehicle, then it would blow up. It would set it off. So you didn't know when it was going to blow up or where it was. And so they said, go over on the side, go over around it and go around the side of the road. We had no sooner gone about 20 feet up ahead, a truck had another mine. And it blew the guys right. I could see one guy, it looks just like he must have been sitting in the back of the truck. It looked like it was just like you threw a hat up in the air, And it just flopping up in the air. And the truck went way up in the air. And boy, and we knew, we kind of had an idea, that the war was going to end up pretty soon. Because we would hear every now and then Churchill speeches on radio, And, he was pretty accurate. Usually what he told was the truth, and it usually happened. And we knew, of course, the Germans were really, the Russians were pushing hard on the Eastern Front. The Eastern Front. So we started really traveling that day, and we started getting more prisoners were given up, groups, small groups, platoons, maybe platoon size. We went one time, and we started getting jeeps up there to ride in. My God, I said, this is the way to fight a war, Well, instead of walking and running, we were riding in jeeps. We went across this open field. There was a whole line of us. We got to the end of this open field. There was a little bit of woods. Behind the woods, there was 3 Tiger tanks sitting there. That's when I knew. I said, hey, this war's winding down. As those guys could have had a field day with us. They could have just whipped us right out. So we went that day, and then we went from one town to the other. In one place there was a whole company there, or a platoon, all lined up ready to surrender to us. And they had just got paid. And, so they knew that they were going to surrender too. So. And then another time, as we kept on going, the traffic kept getting heavier and heavier and heavier. At one point, I don't know whether it was that same day, I think it was, or it might have been the day after, we got to this one point where it got so bad that we put posts out to direct traffic. Zimmerman, myself, and George Hyde was with me again. It seemed like everywhere I went, he was with me, followed me. And we were directing traffic. The vehicles to your right, on foot to your left. And those guys were throwing those weapons away, their weapons away, and this and that. And oh man, and they even had a cavalry ride through. God, beautiful horses. And this one truck that kept sitting there all day. And there were a bunch of SS guys in there. They were partying. and they were, partying, And finally they got decided to go away, and they threw something off the trunk. So we went over there, and there was a barrel of vermouth. So, we claimed that. We didn't know it at the time what it was, but we knew it was wine, some kind of wine, But it wasn't even, it hadn't even been, the seal, the bun hadn't been broke or nothing, It was all sealed and everything. And we got that anyway, but we worked there that night, and towards about dark, this staff car pulled up to where we were, and this, all day long you're watching these soldiers pass, and some of them were very pathetic, They're worn out, they were beat up, and they're tired and battle worn, and even their clothes showed it too, from wear and tear.
Okay, I'm gonna stop. Go for.
To our listening post, and there was a dead German soldier laying on one side. Now, so when the tracers went off, we hit the ground. I hit the ground right next to this guy. I didn't know it, that I had land right next to him. And when we, the guy says, "Okay, let's go," tap like that. The guy wouldn't move next to me. What do you know, in about 3 or 4 seconds, those guys are already moving. Finally, the guy on the other side of him says, "Hey, I'm Stuart." I said, "Hey, I'm lost." I said, he says, so, we finally, by sheer luck, I caught up to that outfit. And this is through a minefield. And here, I'm new at this game, but I followed the ribbon every now and then. And finally, we got up to the company commander, and he says, "Boy, am I glad to see you guys." He says, "I heard you either got lost or you got, captured or something, But that's one guy. He got. Boy, no, that was enough. That was my initiation to NGO. Never even my buddy there. Never even. He got killed first thing to us. Yep. Okay, is that on now?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, this has been on? Oh, I didn't know.
That's on.
Yeah.
Oh.
Go ahead.
So, now, where are we? We are...
We were in Germany with the surrendering troops. You were talking about your vermouth.
Okay. Well, after that vermouth deal, this wagon pulled up, or staff car pulled up, and out got a... You know how you see in the movies, German soldier dressed up? It's got shining boots on. It's got shiny leather jacket on. The whole 9 yards of it. That's where these guys were dressed. He says, in perfect English, he says, "Where is your general, CP?" He says, "This is the commanding general here." From what I gathered afterwards, it must have been the commanding general of the 25th German Army that surrendered to us. They wanted to surrender to us instead of to the, to get out of the way of the Russians as they were coming in. Anyway, at that time, he says, "We want to see your general." I said, "Well, what do you want to see our general for? What do you want to see our general for? What do you want to know for?" He said, "This is a commanding general here. We're going back there with your general. We're going to regroup and fight the Russians." I looked at Zimmerman and looked at Hyde. I said, well, I'll tell you what you do." I said, "You just go right down this road here." I says, "To my right." I says, "There's some MPs down the road. They'll show you right where to go." And that was, I think, that was the commanding general of the 25th German Army. And they didn't, they looked like in pretty good shape. They had nice clothes on and everything. And there was two, the general and another guy sitting next to him, the driver, and this captain that got out talking to us. So that was, and so the next day, we started exploring around Ludwigslust, and our company ran into a German concentration camp. It was not a concentration camp in the words say, it was a starvation camp. It was called Woblin. And it had, my buddy Shields shot the lock off in there, the camp, and they went in. And there was no ovens there. There was, all there was, that was a starvation camp. That's where they brought the slave laborers, a lot of political prisoners, and what have you. There were a lot of Germans, some Germans, mostly French. There was a lot of, there was French, there was different nationalities, Jews, French Jews, Russians. I don't think there was any Russians in there, but there was Polish and some Dutch people in there. And they didn't, they just starved their people there. And then when we walked in there, there was, oh God, it was just pathetic, you know. You could just see the guys in just bones, you know. You couldn't feed them. Somebody gave them something to eat and they died, you know, it killed them because they're not used to food. Didn't have, we went into one building there, the one building, they had, you couldn't tell the living from the dead, sitting on the side there. You know, of course, you know, they died there, had their eyes wide open, and the starving guys are the same way, they looked the same way. You couldn't tell them apart. And in the latrine, they had an open latrine there, the guys were floating in there, so they must have gone, well, they had dentistry, you know, or whatever you call it, you know, the runs. They go to the bathroom, and some of them probably fell in there and drowned in there, what have you. In one building there, they were piled up 7 or 8 deep. They hadn't gotten a chance to get rid of them. You know, mass graves or whatever it was that they were putting them in. And it was just one of those things that, you know, he says, hey, my God, I guess that's what we're fighting this war for. You know, and it's an awful thing. Never forgot it. When we got back to the States, you know, I mentioned it, nobody believed me. They just, I think you're probably making it up, you know, that's the way it used to be, you know. You're making it up probably, you know, how do you know, this and that. It wasn't until the Jews talked about the Holocaust that then they said, oh my God, they really did see that, huh? I said, they sure did, yeah. Never left me, you know, I always remember it right to this day what I saw there. It's just unbelievable, you can't. You know, there were bodies there. They weren't burnt. They weren't ashes. They were bodies. They were alive just maybe a day ago, maybe a few hours ago. They're starved to death. They starved. They died of starvation. That's, you know, we miss 1 or 2 meals, how bad we feel. 3 meals, how bad we feel. These guys were worked and then starved. And then the mayor said that, well, these people didn't know nothing about this. And I understood later, in later years, that they were supposed to make sure that those people had food there, the mayor of that town, because it was in his district. And they had plenty of food there, but they were never given none. And he went back when and they made all the people walk through there, to this place. And then right in the center square in the town of Ludwigslust, they buried a lot of these people right there. And they made all the civilians, everybody, all the inhabitants viewed what happened there. The mayor killed his wife, his son, daughter, and then committed suicide. Killed his family and himself. And they made all the people go through there. That was an awful, awful thing. You can't explain it, you know what I mean? Unless you've seen it, you know, how bad it is, you know. And it's very, very bad. It was very bad, and we felt bad. And what are you going to do? You know, all you can do is just go and get loaded. And a lot of us did that. And we did that for years later, too. Because nobody listened to you anyway, if you told them, you know. After the war was over, you know, it was an entirely different thing, you know. They lose that, they forget that very fast. And then when the Holocaust came along, then the people realized, you know, that it actually happened, and then you were part of it. So anyway, we stayed occupation there for a while, and then we heard that we would be moving out of that area. And we enjoyed that area, right in that area there. We could go hunting. We could. It was part of the Black Forest, I guess, in that area there towards Ludwigslust. That's towards the North Sea there. We could shoot 1 deer in a company and have meat. Guys were going out there, man, and having a good time. And butcher it, you know, have the kitchen take care of it. We had meat for us. And then we eventually heard that, we didn't know whether it was going to be a rumor or not, but we heard that the Russians were taking over our area, which they did. we moved to another area, and then eventually we ended. Well, we stayed occupation for a little while in that area, different camps. We ended up eventually back in France, up north France, and then at that time they figured, oh, the guys are starting to go home. Well, the war was over, and we were going to go. The guys in high points were being shipped back to the States. I think it was 85 points or something like that. They could come back to the States. And the war was over in August. I think it was in August when they dropped the bomb. That stopped us from going. We figured on going to Japan, or going to the Orient.
Mm-hmm.
And,
What were your feelings when you heard about the bombs being dropped?
Beautiful. Couldn't have happened at a better time. We wanted to come home. We didn't want to go over there, No, I don't think nobody realized the idea of. Some, I suppose, would have thought of it, but I don't think nobody realized the idea of jumping in Japan. I think that would have been wholesale slaughter. We would have lost a lot of men there, because they were going to protect their country. I think they would have protected it very much, very hard. We, the guys in the High Point system started going home to different organizations. And we started having a few leaves and this and that, and started regrouping. Then they said they were going to go to Berlin, occupation duty. So I ended up, make a long story short, I went from Saarlouten to Berlin by jeep. I ended up, the colonel put me in charge of battalion beer and liquor supply after the war. And that was a good duty. It was all on account of that. Oh, and right after that vermouth deal, I got orders to report to the medics. Good old medics. I went to the medics, Captain Kitchen and Captain Shapiro were there, and it says, Tarbell, we got something here for you and your guys. I says, what is it? Here was a flask, 5 gallons of 190 proof alcohol. And they had checked, they says, oh, been checked it, inspected, it's good for consumption. I was dishing out alcohol and vermouth and grape juice, and I didn't get no seconds. God, and finally, I got on detached service with Colonel Cook to battalion. I still was carried in the company, but I worked at battalion. And when I went to Berlin, one of the guys in I couldn't get anybody to drink that vermouth, because we didn't have nothing to cut it with. And one of the guys from officers' mess says, "Hey, Tarbell," he says, "I got about 6 cases of scotch, 6 cases of gin." He says, "I'll trade you for that barrel of booze." I said, "You got a deal." So that's the reason I took the colonel's jeep and his driver, and I had about 6 cases of gin. I took it, I had it, and then I took it to Berlin with us, because we had other stuff from there. We used to get it from ice in Germany. We can get schnapps from there. But that was quite a train ride. That was quite a ride, jeep ride. On the Autobahn most of the way, in and out, and wherever the bridges were torn, you had a detour and then get back on. We got to Helmstedt, and from there you went into the Russian zone. And the MP says, "You're going from here to Berlin, it's all Russian zones. You're going to see guards, Russian guards, every so often." He says, "And they salute you." He says, "Return a salute. You're not liable to shoot you if you don't, or do something, get pissed off at you." So we're driving, and I never got so sick of saluting. God, it seemed like every couple of 100 yards or something, there's a guard. We stopped at one place, and we had a kind of a piss call, a relief call. And God, there was a bunch of women working in that potato field, or some kind of a field, doing something, They all come running over there, and you ought to see how quick those guards. Boy, they just held them right back. They weren't going to come over, They knew we were Americans, I guess, the people did. Anyway, we got into Berlin, and That was quite a city. Oh, that was so beat up. God, the subways there. They had artillery. They used to fire artillery in the subways and everything else. And a lot of times the whole street crumbled and that. And they had all the blocks and blocks of buildings were all demolished. And you know, when we got there, you know, we relieved another outfit that was already there. That they had already, the people are already cleaning bricks and this and that. They had work details. They're already rebuilding already. They're trying to rebuild. And I understood that in order to get a food permit, you had to work. So we ended up, you know what I mean, whoever we hired, they got like a ration card to go to this like a soup kitchen, and they were fed meals. I ended up, I took over, we had two restaurants that I took over, enlisted men and the non-com club. I took care of the non-com club. My buddy Fritz took over the enlisted men club. And we had beer there, and I was getting liquor supply from the States. I break that down to the sergeants, first sergeant, down to the mess sergeant, this and that. I took care of them guys first, you know. All the others, you know, everybody got something, you know. We tried to break it up even. And we had, it worked out fairly decent there. And then it's good living. It's good living. We had football games at the Temple, not the Temple, but the where they had the Olympics. The Under the Linden ran right into it. And the Brandenburg Gate was nearby there. I went a couple times through the Russian zone. I went over to the Russian area there a few times, and I didn't want to fraternize with the Russians at all. They were not people to fraternize with. You know. We couldn't get along. We didn't get along. That was the first time they'd ever been. Oh, they bought watches. They bought watches from you. They buy a Mickey Mouse watch and pay $300-400 for it. And they had never been paid in about 6 years, and they were going to spend it all right there when they got paid. And they bought things like that, you know, but they had never seen it before. And, they were taking everything apart. They were taking plumbing apart and everything else, furniture. It was all being shipped back to Russia. And in one of the areas there, my company commander, my company was in charge of a friend of mine. They got a word one night that the Russians were coming in there and raiding this home, taking all the furniture and everything else. And this woman was complaining. So my company commander went there, Magellan, and he took Renner with him. He told Renner, he says, don't let that guy out. Or another lieutenant, it wasn't Magellan, but he was the company commander. He sent another lieutenant with him. And the lieutenant told him, he says, you shouldn't be taking this, you know, stuff out of here. Don't move that truck. He told Renner, he said, if that truck moves, he says, shoot that driver. Well, you know, we never figured that, because he never figured the Russian to move it. So he went in and he tried to pacify the woman and told them, guys, you know, not to, that's not right, you know, this is they're out of their area. This is in the American area, in their zone. So what did they do? He jumps back in the truck and told the driver to take off. The Renner straightened out and shot the driver and killed him. That was the first, he was the first American to kill a German soldier, Russian soldier. And they court-martialed him later, you know, and they said, they asked the colonel, you know, they said, couldn't he have just wounded him? He said, I didn't train my soldiers to wound people. He said, I trained them to shoot to kill. But anyway, he got out of that, you know. Yeah, deal, but they had to do a lot of, my company commander went there and his counterpart, they did a lot of finagling and this and that. But that's the way they were, you know, when we first went in on leave in Berlin, they said you cannot go out on pass unless you have a 45 or a Tommy gun. You have to be armed. If you don't have that, take a rifle, but you got to be armed. I got on a tram and There was a tram running in one area near Hauptstrasse. And I looked at the people, and my God, everybody was either crippled or old people, you know. I says, my God, what's my sidearm for? Not for these people. Well, I found out that night what it was for. But the Russians would come over in our zone, you know, and they'd raise hell, you know. It was to protect us from them. Why, they're an awful bunch. They just went hog wild there, you know, in Berlin. Of course, I guess after 6 years of occupation or this and that, or fighting the war, but their values and ours were kind of a little bit different. We we value human beings, and they didn't seem to value too much. At least that's my impression of them. I didn't care for the average Russian soldier. Maybe we were just brought up different. I don't know.
So, well, how long were you in Germany, occupied Germany?
I was there till November. I think I was around November. I think I left there in around the. Let's see. I think I left in November 5th. I got orders to report to the trucking area the following morning, and a bunch of us were leaving, you know, for the States. So we had a party. It was, no, for 2 days. I had 2 days' notice. I went to, they had a going-away party for me, Club Famina. They had a party for me. I think it was a club from one of the German nightclubs. And oh, we were having a good time. And at that time, that song came out, Sentimental Journey. Oh, I had that band playing that over and over and over. And finally, the waiter came over, and we had our own cognac with us. And the waiter came over, and he says, "There's a gentleman over there, there's an officer over there, he'd like to join your party." He says, "You're having such a good time here." It was a brigadier general from the Far East Command. He was on his way through, going back to the States, and he was going by the way of Berlin. And he says, "I would like to join your party. I'm having such a great time here." He says, "Is somebody going home?" I says, "Yes, sir." I says, "I'm going home." Well, you know, and he sat down. Oh, boy, and we had, of course, we had all kinds of drinks, you know. Oh, we had a grand time. You know, who would think, you know, a brigadier general asking for a party, you know, to join us regular soldiers, you know, regular paratroopers. But I said, "You're having such a grand time." He says, "I just had to come over and ask if I could join." You know, he sent the waiter over, and we had a good time. Anyway, when I ended up at the shipping out early in the morning, about 5 o'clock, I think they said they'd be there. And who was there but General Gavin to say goodbye to us. The last of the old guard was leaving the 82nd, coming back to the States. And he passed out our Belgian Protégés to us. He handed us our Belgian Protégés. He says the rest of your awards will be in the mail or shipped to you or this and that. Yeah, so that's going to send off. And we came back, and we ended up in different camps coming down through. Everybody had black market money, you know, quite a bit of money, you know. And one guy says, the lieutenant says, "Send in this one place, says, just send home 1 month's pay, that's all. Says, no more." This guy shows up with $13,000. That's the last we saw of him. This is called the MPs. You know, here he was already told, don't send no more than 1 month's check home, you know, 1 month's pay. So we got to 20 grand. I think it was 20 grand or Lucky Strike, I forgot which. And we were shipping out back to the States. We were getting ready to go to Le Havre. So you had to turn all your foreign money in. And all they could turn in was 1 month's, $500. They compromised $500 a piece. We could turn in from our bunch from Berlin. So we paid these other guys, give them a $50 bill they only had 1 month's pay to turn in, see? Maybe, I think, an infantry guy was getting, what, 60-some bucks a month or something like that. So the rest of the 500, he could turn out your money in and you give him $50 American dollar bill for it. They're glad to do it. Whatever extra money we had, we got our money in that way. Yeah. We got back to the States. Well, we got to Le Havre, and we got on the USS America, which was the USS West Point, I think it was. Yeah. Then USS West Point, which is the SS America, I think is a luxury liner. And anyway, it was the USS West Point that was taken over by the Army in the service. And we came back, and oh man, I had a couple $1,000s in my billfold here. I didn't even want to play. Poker games didn't even seem good because I won over $1,000 in the poker game there with American money. And after that, I just didn't want to spend the nice $20 bills. They look so entirely different than the foreign currency you've been getting all these years, you know. And we hit a hurricane in the middle of the Atlantic. And, oh God, we were in there for about 2 days in that storm. Oh, it seemed like a week. It seemed like a month. I thought I was never going to hit port. The ship would roll this way and that way and this way. One night, it rolled, and then it stopped, and then it rolled again. And all the barracks racks came piling down. I was sleeping on the ballroom, main ballroom, on the mezzanine floor, the main mezzanine, in the ballroom, grand ballroom. And I thought we went right over, you know. Then it straightened back up, and it seemed like the storm just died right down after that. And whoa, they had some fierce card games in there. You'd go to, that storm knocked off the promenade deck railing, and they lost a couple of the launches. And those people could hold over, I think it was 75 people in the launches. It knocked the water, how powerful it is. That water, that USS West Point, that would go right out of the water, come down, and you know, it would spin, the propellers would spin when they come out of the water, and then when it would hit, it would jerk, you know. And that was this. When those sailors were working round the clock, those welders, you know. And we'd say, how is this? Is this bad? No, this is nothing. No, there's nothing. No. They were trying to get on the sailors. So anyway, make a long story short, we finally made it back. We got back to Hampton Roads, where we left almost 2 years ago. And we came back to Fort Dix. And they were just there just long enough to process us out. And they wouldn't even let us keep our clothes, nothing, just whatever we had, you know. I was lucky. I got through with 3 pistols. I had a permit for them, and a sword, a couple knives, and a couple helmets. And they took that. I forgot to mention that woman in the boats. She asked me for that sleeping bag. Do you remember me? Mm-hmm. When we left, when we were getting ready to leave, there we lined up there, you know, and oh God, they smelled so bad, you know, that they kissed us, you know, goodbye, shook hands. And here's this woman come out in the other room, and she had my jacket for me. She had made a hood, and she had lined the inside with fur from an old fur coat. Man, I was the envy of that. When we made that march, they thought that was a colonel or something, and she had it big enough that would fit over my helmet, you know. It was all fur-lined. I wore that the rest of the war. The rest of the winter. I brought it back. I was going to keep it. You know, they took it away from me at Fort Dix. Really? Yeah. And then they had the nerve to ask me to join the National Guard. I said, well, I don't know. I says, let me think about it. But then I did think about it afterwards, you know. But you know, my wife wouldn't even let me join the Salvation Army after that. After I got home, she was so glad to have me home. But then I got home. I went into the. I went back in the same trade that I was in. And then I changed from there, and I went into ironworking. And
What's it like to be in the air?
Yeah, my wife and I had we raised 6 kids, and I kept working. I retired in the ironworkers as general foreman of the nuclear plant in 9 Mile 2, and I spent 34 years with the ironworkers, and I've been retired 18 years now. And I think I was looking in here, I had my continental service, I had 10 months and 28 days in the United States. Foreign service, I had 1 year, 9 months, and 21 days. I had more time in a foreign country than I had here.
Now, how many jumps did you make?
Combat jump, I had 1 combat jump in the seaborne invasion, and the river crossing in Holland, that was I got a presidential citation for that. And for Angio, a citation, presidential citation. So I have the list of the awards that I have. Did you want me to read it, or did you want? Okay, I had the Ardennes campaign, the Central Europe campaign, the Rhineland campaign, and the Rome-Arnold campaign. I had the U.S. Army Parachute Wings with Combat Star, U.S. Army Combat Infantry Badge, the Bronze Star Medal, the Good Conduct Medal, German Occupation Medal, American Theater Medal, the Victory Medal, the ETO with 4 Bronze Star and Arrowhead. Arrowhead is for being the lead in the combat, leading other troops into combat. The New York State Conspicuous Service Cross, the Belgian Commemorative Medal, the Orange Lanyard, that's from Queen Wilhelmina of Holland. The Belgian Croix de Guerre Individual Award. The Orange Lanyard and the Belgian Croix de Guerre are individual awards. They go right with the discharge papers. They're the individual awards. And then I got the Erasmus Medallion in 1984 from the Dutch Foreign Military Affairs. And I had the Presidential Unit Citations with 2 oak leaf clusters. That's it.
That's plenty.
And we had a nice, I had a nice family. My son is retired. My son is 2nd generation paratrooper. He's from Vietnam. And one of my daughters is an artist. So she had the Governor's Award for her first Mohawk woman to earn the Pataki Governor's Award.
How do you think your service changed or affected your life?
I think it did. It broadened my sphere in living, and not only that, but it gave me how to command men too. Now at 9 Mile 2, at one time I had over 200 men, almost 200 men working for me, and I had 14 foremen working for me. And I think by being able to, take orders and give orders and stuff like that, you got to give and take, See, that's one thing I learned, that our officers were one of the world's best. They ate with you, they fought with you, they lived with you, and they fought for you. And one good thing about World War II was that we stayed as one group. And they did not change, like, every couple of months or every 6 months you get new batch officers in. No, it was like, this was right from beginning to end, they stayed with us. And that was the good part about it, and I think that made for better comradeship, and I think for better soldiering too.
Tell us about this. Hold it up to the camera and tell us about that.
Oh, this?
Yes.
Where'd you get that?
You sent it to us.
You sent it to us.
Oh, I did?
Your folder. Yes, sir.
Okay,
Oh, this was taken in Berlin.
Hold it right there, and
Yeah,
I
okay.
can zoom in on it.
Yeah.
Okay, was that a painting?
This is, I think, let me just check and see. I'll have to look at it to see.
Sure.
Yes, this is a painting from a photograph that was taken in Berlin, Germany. This is a painting by Orrin Lyons, Chief Orrin Lyons. Yes, when he graduated in his senior year in Syracuse University, he did 3 portraits. He did a portrait of Carmen Basilio, he did a portrait of Roy Simmons, and he did a portrait of myself. Yeah, and did this. He gave me this as a present.
I've got just one question for you. Your company commander that was wounded,
Yes,
did he survive?
yes, he survived. He came back and he rejoined our outfit he joined our outfit not he never really came back to take over the company, just to leave from our outfit to come back to the States. And he retired as a full colonel. And most of the guys, my company commander in Berlin, Germany, was James Magellas, which was a Lieutenant Magellas. He ended up in Vietnam as the rank of a military major general in the what do you call it, Corps Command, CORPS. And he was with the U.S. Aid Department. He had 4,500 people working under him, civilians and what have you. And he worked there. He stayed in Vietnam till they dissolved that organization, and he came back to the States. And then he stayed in Bogota, Colombia for a while. And then he was head of the U.S. Aid Department at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, the Special Forces School. He was a U.S. aid man there. And we got to get together there with him quite a few times. That was very nice, because he had nice, he had a lot of pull there at that camp. He was known by first name basis in that camp there, by all the generals and all the main officers and all that. And we're still fighting to get him the Congressional Medal of Honor, which we knew he deserves, but we're fighting politics right now. The governor and all the politicians from Wisconsin are fighting for him, and we get all the different organizations behind us, the American Legion, the VFW, and now what have you. And even the present day 504 members at Fort Bragg have great respect for him and for our group. And shall I mention about the books? No.
What books?
We got some books being published.
Oh, sure.
Well, we got a book. There's a book already out by I Company Commander that wrote Strike and Hold, which has my stuff in there about the trip over Holland, about going over Holland. Strike and Hold by T. Moffat Burris. He wrote that book, and he asked if I could put something in it, and I sent him that. And he put the whole thing there. I thought he would just put the incident in there about it, but there's about 3-4 pages in there. And then I helped Lieutenant Magellas with I and about 29 other guys. I got their addresses. I had a lot of their addresses. We got them all together, and we wrote like his days in the World War II, Lieutenant Magellas' days. It's going to be called All the Way to Berlin, and it's about, there's a lot of stuff in there about right from the beginning to end, like everyday instances of what happened, this and that. That is being published by Presidio Press this March, and it'll be sold by Random House. It's on sale right now through Amazon.com in Europe, Australia, and the United States, Canada. And I was interviewed for another book by Mike Takeoff, T-A-K-I-F-F, which will be out Veterans Day. And,
Spell his last name again, please.
Mike Takeoff, T-A-K-I-F-F. It's about World War II fathers and Vietnam sons. I think they took 30 people. We took 30 people from out of the country, and we were one of them. We were selected one. That should be out Father's Day. And that's HarperCollins is putting that out.
Okay, we'll have to see if we can get those.
Yeah. So I think that, and then, well,
Different one of these forms. I screwed this one up.
I think that, and then, you know, my wife passed away in 1985, just right after I retired, 3 years after I retired, she passed away. And I've remarried now, and so it's just a shame that she went through so much, and then passed away right after we retired, But she got one of these serious illnesses. This was, we were thinking about moving to Florida, and she was sick just a short while. She had what they call inflammatory carcinoma, and she was sick only 14 months. In fact, they gave her less time to that, but by operating on her and doing chemotherapy and radiation treatments, they prolonged her life a few months more. But I think that's about it. I think I told you everything.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
appreciate it very much. I hope
And-
someone